Check for the live stream. Thanks. Okay, good evening, everyone. Looks like everybody's staff's here, council's all here. Welcome to our special committee of the whole for budget for March 12th, 2026. As we call the meeting to order, I just want to acknowledge that we are gathering on the traditional territories of the Coast and Strait Salish peoples, and specifically recognize the Kwanghan people known today as the Songhees and Esquimalt nations, and that their historic connections to these lands continue to this day. First order of business for the special committee of the whole is approval of the agenda. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Unopposed? Mayor's remarks. I didn't make any opening remarks at the last budget meeting. We went through the details and had a chance to ask questions. I thought I would just take a moment just to try and frame where we're at and what we need to get out of this. So as we consider the budget today, I'm just going to ask that we consider the broader financial context that we're going to be making these decisions in. And I can't obviously speak to any of the uncertainty of individual households or their employment situations, the uncertainty of tariffs or war or other things that are going on. But I think it's fair to acknowledge the significant financial pressure for many of our residents. Tonight, we're going to be looking at options that are likely to result in somewhere between an 8 or a 12% increase to property taxes. That results in total taxes on a median house of somewhere between $5,400 and $5,600 and change per year on a median home. Most of those costs and the increases that we're looking at are fixed and beyond our discretionary spending, but well beyond the 2.4% inflation rate or 3.3% average Canadian wage growth in the last year. For our taxpayers, including all the rest around this table and many of our staff, the district budget portion makes up about 55% of the total tax bill that comes into a household. And when that arrives in the mailbox, the school district is going to make up around 30 or 35% of that bill. In Oak Bay, that'll probably be a bit on the high side of that, just because the province has now introduced an additional surcharge for higher value homes, and we have a lot of those in Oak Bay. The CRD and its ancillary, the hospital district and the housing corporation add another 8 to 10%. And the BC Transit, which has gone up about 50% in the last couple of years, is now around 6%. So with Oak Bay at about $5,500 and all those other pieces, the total cumulative cost is a bill close to $10,000 on a median household, which is significant. And I would say that no matter how reasonable the arguments are for the budget or for the increase, the carrying capacity or the ability to pay for residents and businesses needs to be front of mind as we consider our next steps on this budget. This is impacted not just by our taxes, as noted, which generally make up only about 5% of the total tax burden of people in Canada, but by the far more substantial federal and provincial taxes and fees. I wanted to just touch on two factors that really struck me from the recent budgets that came out. There's direct cost to residents, but there's also impacts, I think, of future budget considerations. Obviously, the direct impact, the federal Liberal and provincial NDP projections, which are maybe optimistic, the average Oak Bay household will be paying around, in 3 years, about $15,000 a year just in interest payments. So not paying off of debt, that's just servicing the debt, just the pure interest payments. That's obviously more than we spend on healthcare in the country. So obviously going to have some ramifications long term. For our budget planning, given that the federal and provincial deficits are largely structural and not just investment deficits, there is likely to be significantly less discretionary money available for municipalities going forward as well. So while our budget here might seem minor in comparison to those numbers, it highlights how we have to do everything in our power to keep costs down while providing our services, and even more importantly, focus on life cycle costs, because these cost pressures are going to be long, not just 1 year costs. And obviously we can't fix the overall tax burden, but we can demonstrate good fiscal governance. I've been extremely proud of this council. We've had real fortitude in funding infrastructure. Much of the tax increases over the last 8 years has been focused on funding that investment. And the reason I say that is not just because it's important, but it's going to pay massive dividends in time as we move further away from break-fix expenditures and more into planned replacements as we're able to scale up those projects. The other thing is the crisis in budgets at the province and Ottawa tell me that we should, I believe, not rely on grants or other external funding. which probably does change some of our thinking. We need to be running our operations and find an operating budget that allows us to be solvent over a 100-year cycle without expectation of being helped by others. And obviously that requires discipline in every aspect of our business. I just want to acknowledge we are extremely lucky to have our exceptional staff. We have great guidance to help build this model. You see a lot of work done over the last few years, if you've been paying attention into some of the planning around debt management, asset management, and other things that allow us to run the organization in a way that allows us to achieve that. Tonight we have a lot of work to do to continue that work, meet service excellence, but also regulatory compliance and fiscal sustainability. So with that, I look forward to our discussion this evening, and we'll hand this over to, I believe, Ms. LaChance, our Director of Finance and Asset Management. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I really appreciate the introductory comments this evening. That allows me to keep my comments brief and appreciate the insights. On behalf of the staff, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Day 2 of Council deliberations on the 2026 to 2030 Financial Plan. We're returning this evening with additional information as requested, as well as the reduction scenarios directed by Council on February 23rd. Both of those are included in your packages this evening. The intent this evening is to provide the opportunity for Council to consider any element of the financial plan and any of the provided reduction scenarios and optional investments. We are seeking direction on changes to the draft plan and the eventual approval of the plan so that the financial plan bylaw may be prepared. We have a brief presentation to take you through Council's decisions this evening. To support the proceedings, we have come prepared with a worksheet to track changes to taxation based on Appendix 15A now in your packages. When it comes time, we are able to pull that up, and this will allow us to track, display, and show the revised tax increase as well as the tax increase percentage. Of note for Council, where change that's directed or discussed requires staff to return with more information and/or a revised budget estimate, staff may need to take that away and come back, but we will flag that for you and let you know, and then we would essentially add another meeting to the schedule to accommodate. Before you will be the March 5th report and appendices, as well as the presentation that reflects the balanced budget, the draft capital plan, operating plan, reserves and borrowing plans. You also have the new material covered under the March 12th report cover. That will be Appendix 12, Appendix 16, and Appendix 15A. Council also has been provided a hard copy of Appendix 15A to help with any worksheets or notes. It will be the same worksheet that we will use on the screen to track. So the references that you will have there in front of you will help guide us to make those changes. And just before I move into the presentation, to help guide us this evening, are there any questions or comments?
Any questions from Council at this point? All right, please continue.
Okay, thank you. So this evening, on the first slide, we've outlined the points of attention for Council for decisions that we'll cover this evening with you. They are our perception of both the capital and operating plan decisions that we hope to confirm with Council. As we move through, we in a way are circling back to our presentation last week, but we are looking to confirm that you have everything you need on each of these elements before we move forward. We will take you through, we'll make sure that you have references to your package, and then we'll be asking for your support to continue or stop and discuss. These are considered essential elements, as I mentioned. We will stop on the capital plan to begin. We're going to take a brief look at the capital plan as we did present it last week. We'll also make sure that we stop on debt funding and reserves and ensure that Council's comfortable. Moving into the operating budget after that, there are a bit of a list here. There are various elements. All of it you will have seen. We are introducing just one new item this evening. As we prepare to do the tax rate bylaws, we start to consider the effective assessments and have the new non-market change here for Council this evening. It is similar to previous years. Council will have been considering the impact of those new revenues and how to incorporate those into setting tax rates. That decision will be here and we'll walk you through in this presentation. The other elements, we've listed them all separately because they are going to be considered likely by council separately, but they do form part of the base budget. The only element that's secondary and not included in the calculation of the 11.2% increase is the optional investments. And those are retained here in your package for consideration this evening. So with that, I'm going to just jump into the several slides on capital plan. The capital plan consolidated is showing on this slide. That's the 2026 to 2030 5-year plan. It's across all departments and it totals $219 million for the 5 years. It's fairly consistent with the previous year's five-year plan total, excuse me. However, we did do reprioritization, which has been reported to council, and that allows us to reduce some of the pressure on reserve funding up front, allowing those funds to remain invested for longer. The details of projects and costs, including the related programs, have been included in the Appendix 5 and as presented in the department budgets last week. Also for council and public reference, the major projects are listed in Appendix 6. And there are several, as Mayor Murdoch mentioned, several significant investments for the community, namely Carnarvon Park, public safety building. There's also some of the minor projects would be the library HVAC, and also looking at the Oak Bay Recreation Center, fitness center renewal there. The next slide takes us into reserve funds. This is a graph to show you how over the 5 years the capital plan is set up to draw on reserves. The net reduction that council would need to consider and be comfortable with is a net reduction of 31 million. So through the 5-year period, the planned savings is of 103 million, with reserve spending outpacing at 135 million. Not uncommon in the period of investment. Something to notice, there will be other cycles for the community where this would be a net savings position. And this helps us inform our debt position going forward as well. And I was just going to go ahead and keep moving, jumping right into debt. And we've just highlighted a couple of slides here for council. So this is the listing of the specific projects that have been identified for borrowing. It's not all projects within the capital plan. It's only those projects that align with our debt management policy that have been identified and are shown here. Each year, if those spending doesn't happen, we recast the forecast of debt and we reprice the principal and interest, if you will. Also listed on this slide, I know quite small, but is in your package, will be the term of the debt issuance that's being proposed based on policy and the current MFA indicative rate. The graph on the right, maybe not my best graph ever, but does try to show council that each project actually does have a different borrowing pattern. And so we would consider that when we issue, once a loan authorization is approved by council. The last slide, I'd like to make sure we highlight this. It is a tad tricky to find it in your summary level of the financial plan. The principal and interest by year, based on the debt forecast, of course, only coming true if those capital expenditures happen at that exact time. Could be subject to change and gets recast, as I mentioned, each year. Just to help council here, the first two lines, for example, are the 2026 debt servicing, and interest and principal are shown there separately. The 2026 is not showing a value because the timing of issue that we anticipate will be fall, and much of the principal and interest will be falling into the following year. That takes me through the capital section and the elements that staff wanted to highlight for council consideration. At this point, we would like to progress this evening by asking council's direction to consider the 2026-2030 capital plan as presented, including that intended use of borrowing and reserves as presented before we move into the operating plan.
Sure, thank you for that. I'm probably going to just save the actual motions for till the very end of this, but I think it's a good checkpoint for us just to see if there's any flags that people want to, either questions to ask or people who wish to, if they just indicate at this time as you want to come back to this, that would be helpful, but not 100% necessary. Any questions at this point? Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and through you to either Ms. LaChance or perhaps Mr. Soulier, just about the Carnarvon Park and building, as Mayor Murdoch just did state, grant funding is probably not something that we should take into consideration. Our recreational facilities are already a fairly extensive piece of our budget compared to other communities. And so I'm wondering if, despite the numbers being in here, what we had looked at for the project all along, if staff will be revisiting that, particularly with the daycare center portion of it, because the province is looking at providing funding for daycares attached to educational facilities rather than standalone facilities, and have pulled back on the funding anyways. So it doesn't necessarily have to impact what we do tonight, but will that be revisited before we go forward with the project? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. And probably some clarity for the public's benefit as well as to how much was a grant anticipation as part of our borrowing piece or not, just so we know how that number came about. Thank you, Ms. LaChance.
Yes, thank you. And actually, I think to directly respond, I'm going to pass that to Mr. Soulier. But I would mention that we did highlight in the package some of the BC Budget 2026 impacts. So that I know of course, immediately we sort of flag it, hand it over to the department, and there's a project delivery team that would be leading us through that. I know we've been actively talking about likelihood of grants and grant applications. And so that's probably a perfect moment to pass over to my colleague.
Thank you for that. Mr. Soulier.
Through the mayor, some feedback there.
You've got that microphone. It's always a random. Oh, there we go.
Better?
Better.
Okay. So in terms of the overall budget, and again, we're estimating the total cost to be in the neighborhood of 31 million. We have certainly applied for grants, but we are not assuming that grants are going to be received. And we have put in 2 applications already. We've received word on 1 that we were not successful, and we'll continue to pursue any opportunities that come forward. With respect to the capital grant for the childcare facility, that was a program that was in place for several years, and we understand that that is not going to be available for this going forward. So certainly that is a piece that we wouldn't be able to count on, obviously, but we are waiting for further details on the federal program that was announced a few months back.
Ms. Hunt?
Thank you very much, through you, Mayor, to Councillor Patterson. And just in respect of, looking at the design and are we doing anything differently, at this point, no, staff are proceeding with what Council approved as part of the schematic design back in February, I believe it was. So we have not revisited redesigning because of the lack of childcare grants or anything like that at this point.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you. I'm not sure if this can be answered, but I'm just wondering if we know which capital projects within the next 2 years could be perhaps safely deferred without creating any significant cost escalation or any safety risks, if you can answer that.
Ms. LaChance?
Thank you. So I specifically don't have a list here with me, but I can share that in reprioritizing the capital plan across all 5 years, we did identify projects that were maybe lower in risk and maybe could be And so those that you see in the 2026 year are all those that have maybe that slightly higher risk assessment and where they are required to happen. In some cases, they're just getting started in 2026, but that is something that we could bring back if that's amenable. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Just for people who aren't following on the thing, that was the two large ones are the storm sewer rehabilitation and road reconstruction program, and the start of the Carnarvon Park building. As I read that, is that correct, Ms. LaChance? But that's the Appendix 11 5-year borrowing that project. Okay. Any other questions at this point? Okay, please continue.
Thank you. So similarly, we'll move into the operating plan. Just starting on this first slide, not intended for us to read through this, but just to draw your attention to the 15A in front of you. So as part of the base budget operating plan, we would like to have council consider the cost drivers that have been previously laid out, both in the department packages and presentation, and then summarized here for council with tax rate impacts. So in summary, we are looking at the non-discretionary impacts, phase-in of capacity over time, impacts to tax, any of those one-time costs such as election, technology strategy, or deer management affecting tax rates. We do have the a series of new requests for FTEs considered cost driver in the base budget. And then we do have some department-specific revenue changes that are notable and have been reported to council as part of the reconciliation. Additional to that, and layered on, is the use of one-time funding, namely surplus, which is discretionary and is subject to council consideration and approval. And so we carry that forward, and when we seek approval on the base operating budget, we are looking for approval on that list. Depending on changes we would receive this evening, this list would be amended to be accurate for that approval decision. And then lastly, this is the list that I referred to with the series of requests, new FTE requests. These are the positions that have been requested. There's a total of 5.27 FTEs that are requested, total cost of $653,800. Some of these, as you can see, one of the positions isn't counted in the 5.27. It is a term position. So the costs are actually funded from one-time funding or recommended from one-time funding. And so you'll see the net tax impact to the right being 1.1%. The costs net of those one-time funding and other funding sources for these FTE requests is $451,000 or $452,000 rounded. Next, I just wanted to be able to stop and explain the non-market change to council. I appreciate that this is new content for council this evening. Definitely timely as we consider what changes need to be made. As you would expect, council, more of a factor as there has been recent growth in Oak Bay. So what we're looking at here is a graph. You can see that the assessment values excuse me, are listed by year. So you can see that the fairly steady values in each of the categories, very heavily weighted into the residential. The overall increase in assessment values within Oak Bay boundaries is 1.9% across all classes. Within that 1.9% would be the factor of growth that we're going to speak about. So when we're looking at the non-market change and the drivers for growth, we're really looking for those sustained new inventory numbers to help us analyze how best to use that revenue. As mentioned, it has been relatively small in previous years, but definitely this year is 2 times the size, or nearly 2 times the size as it was last year. So the total impact from last year was $163,000 that council considered. And apologies, these are my speaking notes. I can provide all of this to you. I can see you scanning the slide. Yeah, I'll go a tad slower just to make sure if you want to make notes. So that's 163,000 as considered by council last year. And this year, the simulation is returning an estimate of 350,000 in new growth revenue. When we look a bit deeper, we identify that of that amount, 230,000 is related to new inventory. So new growth numbers are driven off a number of different drivers. I'm sure my colleague can jump in and help me out with some of the finer facts. But for the district, the inventory change is that 230,000. And then we would also, based on financial management practices, be looking to not always use new growth only on the current tax rates and tax operating cost delivery. We'd also be looking to bolster some of the longer term capital commitments that we have. In fact, in this year, we implemented the DCC and ACC programs. And as part of that program, the district has a 1% municipal assist factor. And that is not necessarily an obligation. If the growth doesn't come to pass and we don't build the building, that's not necessarily an obligation, but it is close to a $550,000 total in that program that the municipality would be responsible for paying for. So as part of our recommendation, we would split the new growth numbers in two. We would have an offset recommendation here for you of 230,000. That would be the inventory number, the new people that are already here in 2026 and that will be using facilities, putting pressure on operating, driving up the activity levels. And then we would have 120,000 remaining that we suggest we set up a municipal assist factor reserve. I might need to work on the name of that. I apologize. But I wanted to make sure that it's absolutely clear that if we do put that money away, it will have a specified purpose established by bylaw and only used for that purpose. So I would like to pause there, allow Michelle to jump in, or sorry, Ms. Hunt. And we've been spending a lot of time together. So and then, of course, any questions or conversation from council.
Sure. Do you have anything to add, Ms. Hunt? Go to questions.
Thank you very much, Councillor. No, I think Ms. LaChance explained it very well. I think the big thing is that tax growth is driven either by new residents that are moving in now, which are putting pressure on our existing services, and I think the additional tax growth we get from that should go into the base budget to help offset those additional pressures that are right now. And then part of that tax growth is about future growth. It's about setting up. It comes from when council approves a change in land use or additional density. So it allows for future growth into the district, but those people aren't here yet. And so, using that funding for future obligations such as the municipal contribution to the DCCs and ACCs. So I think Rihanna did a great job.
Thank you. Other questions on this at this time? Go ahead, Councillor Watson.
Just one, please. You were so swift and obviously very clear, but I missed the distinction between the 350,000 and the 230,000 that's on that slide. If you could just review that again. I was not taking notes quickly enough.
Go ahead, Ms. LaChance.
Yes, thank you very much for that, through your worship. Really appreciate the opportunity. I do love numbers and I go through them pretty quickly, so I appreciate that opportunity. So when we're looking at the total of the 350,000, it's just purely a number that BC Assessment is drawing a circle around and saying within the assessment base, this is not about the existing portfolios changing value. So the existing folios have a up and down effect each year, but the pie is still the same size. We're looking at the change in inventory, so where we have growth and new population, perhaps, or new doors. I think we were referring to it earlier. It helps me make sense of it. And then what we do is we look for that clear item that BC Assessment calls out. And so we use that to prorate the 350,000 against assessment value. So the inventory numbers against the total assessment value times the 350. And that is something that can be consistently used from year to year to be able to interpret new growth and direct funding in a reasonable way.
Thank you. And I think if people at home can't see the slide, there was a total of $350,000, of which is broken into 230 for tax rate reduction and 120 for the capital reserve, and that total is at 350,000. So just if that's, it's actually hard for us to see this screen a little bit just because of the glare. Is that sufficient, Councillor Watson? Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I have Councillor Braithwaite Patterson and Appleton.
Thanks so much, Mayor. And you're probably going to hear me using the term phasing in a lot tonight. I'm just wondering what the operational pressures are specifically around some of the positions. So could some of the staff positions that were on the slide prior to this one be phased in over multiple years instead of all starting in 2026? And if it was like that, would that be something that staff would go away and come back to us and say, these positions are the ones that operationally we would really require and these ones could be phased in?
I'm going to just delay that conversation because we're going to get to the specificity of those positions. That was really just an informational page, but we are going to go through it. Councillor Patterson and then Appleton.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I guess when I look through all of the package, and it relates so much to us, and so what I'm always looking for is it reasonable, I guess, is it reasonable compared to other municipalities? So when I usually look at the municipal residential tax levy that you can get from the provincial websites. And so when I looked at 2025, Oak Bay was at, and this is per $100,000 of assessed value. That's where it gets kind of, well, because Oak Bay's assessed values are higher than, say, Esquimalt's, but it's a nice unit to sort of base. Are we comparable? Are we, or, because so many times residents will say, oh, our taxes are so high. But when I looked at 2025, Oak Bay was 318, Saanich was 312, Victoria was 337, and Esquimalt was 349. They had the fire hall that they built, so that pushed theirs up quite a bit, which is a sort of a flag for me about where we're going. In 2026, from what I can figure out, looking at ours, it was 353. Saanich, we already know, is about 337. Victoria, 372, and Esquimalt, 392. So I find those figures useful to kind of judge, are we in an operating norm? People think that, oh my God, it's going up so much here, but I think all I'm seeing in this is we are coming up to where the other municipalities had already established the levies. So it's not that we are pushing ours so much higher, it's just that we're coming up more to the norm with the added repairs and maintenance, I think, a lot of it, and some of the water and sewer work we're doing. So I caution that when we think we have to maybe be too extreme, that I'm still seeing that we are very much within the ballpark of what is happening around us in the region. So and if Ms. LaChance would like to comment on if that is a reasonable way to judge how are we doing in comparison to our neighbors?
Very unfair to ask a staff person to tell us that we're being unreasonable, but Ms. LaChance, you're welcome to make a comment if you wish. You don't have to.
Thank you. Through your worship, yeah, I'm happy to just make a brief comment because I, of course, am not looking at the same numbers. But absolutely, when we're looking at the approach to establishing service levels, the annual budget, how we leverage some of our financial tools to mitigate taxation, we are looking for what Oak Bay needs and when they need it. There is some sense of course, are we considered affordable? And that is definitely a matter of interpretation. But definitely we seek the direction from council in terms of how we set the budget, at what levels, what new staff positions are hired. And so when those comparisons happen, it is quite often from either a regional view or maybe even comparison of services. So each of those districts that you had named off have a different suite of services. And so it does get rather hard to compare across. But I would say that I thought that I would like to share that the comment about Oak Bay doing some catch up is very true. We are working through a period of investment Mayor Murdoch brought up the break-fix environment, and we've made meaningful difference from an asset management strategy point of view. And that has been shown with the tax driver reconciliations, that there are drivers coming from infrastructure. And so I think that's where you mentioned Esquimalt, and that is part of what's showing up for Esquimalt as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship. Actually, just a fairly simple structural question, and just note that there's new presentation materials for tonight. You made reference to those following at home, but I don't believe that it's actually online as part of the council package, so I just wanted to ensure that it was uploaded at some point.
Yes, thank you very much for that. We had hoped to have that uploaded, but had earlier start this evening and didn't have that opportunity. It will absolutely be added to the public record. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't see any other questions. I have just one question on this particular slide, and it's kind of a minor one, but just out of curiosity. We only ever had the one farm, and it looks like, according to this, it came off the folio in 2025. And I know that happened, but I was just making sure that 1.9% wasn't just a rejig of that, because the valuation changes is quite substantial between the farm. But that did happen in 2025 and not in 2026. Is that correct, Ms. LaChance?
Yes, thank you, to your worship. That supplementary assessment value did change in 2025. We received that actually before we issued tax bills last year. So we provided that supplementary adjustment that went into assessments last year. So it's actually near comparative, and as you can see, it's not showing. Yeah.
That's perfect. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't missing that in the assessment there of the 1.9%. Thank you very much. I don't see other hands, so why don't we continue with the going through the consolidated plan and some of the reduction options we have in front of us.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And I'm here to take us through to the end. This is just the last couple of slides to just reinforce the pieces that are in front of you for the operating plan. So showing on the slide, again, is not intended to read every line, but just to help you segment the sections that we hope to move through with you this evening. You're seeing the reduction options that staff have put together and provided. They're in the order as requested by council. So scenario A, you'll notice in your packages and the large printout, hopefully that's working, that there's a scenario that takes the 11.2% base budget down to 8%. And then there's a scenario B, which takes the 11.2 base budget down to a 10.1%. That is rounding. We're very close to 10. We definitely intended to get to 10, and so I apologize if that's not exactly 10. This is an area that it would be new material this evening, so we're happy to take any discussion or questions, and we will get to that just shortly here. The next section is just, we've talked about this a lot, but it's just the optional investments. I have to keep mentioning them because they sort of hang outside the 11.2, so we don't want to lose track of them. And we do want to make sure that council does give us that direction and that there's, council has everything they need to understand that these are work that we intend to fully get to, but they are subject to phasing, prioritizing investments from a staff perspective and work plans. And so this is up to council if you wish to advance this work into an earlier year. Otherwise, it would be in future work plans. So with that, I'm just going to wrap us up on this slide. This is really to guide us through the decisions on the operating plan. I'm just going to sort of read through it so we can use this as a reference. At the top, we're asking for council's consideration on the 2026-2030 base operating plan. That's the, in brackets, 11.2%. That's within Appendix 15A, and we're referring to sections A through G. And so we would be looking to get council's consideration on A through G, likely as a package, and then moving through to the next. We will look for council's consideration of new growth revenue, and we're calling that section M in your package. And then following that, council consideration on the budget mitigation or reduction options, and that's labeled section H through K. And that, of course, includes, as directed by council, the Appendix 4 core FTE requests. And then lastly, we're going to ask for the consideration of council on the optional investments, which are labeled section L. Lastly, just before I seek that direction and then seek advice on how you would like to move through this. Again, we do have a worksheet that we can help track council's directions. And of course, and we are here to answer any questions and accommodate any discussion. And I would just wrap by saying that that's on the entire financial plan this evening.
Thank you very much for that. Certainly what I would probably like to do is just, from a resolution perspective, we are a committee of the whole, so I'm hoping we can be a little bit fluid in how we're kind of going through this. I think what I'd like to do is just touch on, as just basically following that plan, which is to go through A through G, which does include a number of new positions, but those are going to be discussed later in the Appendix 4 portion. And so I want to deal with that at that point. So I think the order is perfect. I do want to just share with anybody following at home, because it's a large agenda package and sometimes hard to find where the information is. And so I really appreciate, we're looking for some way, and I appreciate staff looking at a mechanism here. So Appendix 15A, if you're looking at the package, is really where this information is. It does reference Appendix 15, Appendix 4, and a few other places in here that we'll get to, but really, if you're looking at how council's walking through this, that's where the letters line up, that's what we're talking about. So I'm very happy to take it through that portion, and so really initially, where we're starting off at in the proposed approach, which really came to us at the last meeting, and we walked through in detail, that's really that starting point of 11.2%, which we can then add or take from. So is there anything in those pieces that people would like to change, modify, or address at this time? And I'm not going to prevent it from coming back, because I'm not going to do kind of, we're making a resolution and we're not going to come back to it. But I think for the most part, that's kind of the baseline that we're going to be working from. Are we all, anybody here wish to touch on that? Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. I just had a question of clarification, just to make sure that I'm confident moving forward. Can I just confirm that E up in the first table is equal to I down below? They're both 1.6%, but the E is titled New Requests and Department Plans, and I seems to include some other things. I just wanted to confirm if I'm understanding that correctly.
Chance, I'll let you answer that. I was going to, but go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Really appreciate the question through your worship. So yes, they're quite right to notice that the FTEs that have been listed at the bottom section are listed as net of the offsetting funding. So it's important to note that other funding, such as capital and one-time surplus money, offset the impact on tax. And so at the bottom section, they've been reflected that way to incorporate the correct calculation for a reduction scenario.
Does that answer the question?
Your Worship, maybe
I think, yeah, go ahead.
I just clarify, it's actually the items I4 through 11. The first three, I1, 2, and 3, are other budget mitigation options that we came up with. So if you're equating the new FTE request, it's actually I4 through 11.
Yeah. Councillor Smart.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, just a follow-up question then, understanding then that it's really 1.1 worth of new core requests listed in I below the extra 0.4% that we're seeing under E. Could you just clarify what that is then?
Sure. Mr. Chance, go ahead.
Yes, and so I will use the references because I think that will help. When we're looking at the new requests under E, those would be the full costs identified to start. And then when you move down under section G, that's where some of the one-time funding for the term position or for the overlap of the IT manager position would be shown separately, because we do need a separate decision from council on that. And then below, when we get to the bottom, we've provided the net value of that. And so the values are correct, they're just built or layered as we move to the 11.2.
And I would point that I-4 through 11 are in Appendix 4, which we'll go through individually. So we'll have a chance to have those conversations.
Yes, and Appendix 4 actually helps you see those other funding sources very clearly. They, both of those numbers are reconciled in that Appendix 4.
Thank you. So with that, in terms of those first sections, sections A to G, any other? Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Just further to that, so I guess, I mean, this is one way of doing it, but I'm seeing like, I just want to be really clear about what it is that we're doing with section E, because we're contemplating looking at A through G, but essentially what we're doing is moving with section E, which is Appendix 4, and then in reduction scenarios, section I, we're essentially contemplating taking, so we're starting from a number and then we're essentially approving one number and then approving taking things away from it. So, which is different than how it's structured in Appendix 15, which it talked about, you know, sections A through D of Appendix 15 in last week's package is separate from section E, which shows the new requests under a separate section. So, as long as we're clear on what it is that we're doing, I think we can do it that way, but I found it more clear in Appendix 15, where new requests were another additive component rather than included in A through G and then removed individually. So as long as we're clear as to what we're doing.
Yes, and I think in fairness, this is laid out this way. It allows us to be very clear about the costs on these pieces, but most importantly, the request directed by council at the last meeting was to give two scenarios in which we were achieving the targets, and so this allows for that kind of comparison overall. Yes, and I think we just need to I'll make every effort, and so will staff, to make clear what it is that we are doing at each stage of those. So right now, we're essentially starting at 0. The first part here is where we were last week, which is the 11.2%, and we'll start there, and then everything else is really, there's the section M, and then the section H through K are all options for removing, and then section L is the optional investments, which would give us a chance for things that we might wish to add back into that, which are not included in the 11.2%. So we're sort of going down, and then they have the option of adding up again. Councillor Appleton?
Thank you, Russell. So just for clarification, is it your intention to deal with section M immediately after sections A through G?
It is. Councillor Green?
Thank you, and I really appreciate all of this process work. Just for clarification, under section I, reduce core service levels, what would be helpful, and maybe I missed it, I hope I didn't, we have reduced front counter hours, but do we know what first of all, do we understand what the current status of those hours is? And secondly, do we understand what would happen if we reduced? So that impact would be helpful just overall. The same goes for reducing, you know, all of the reductions. I'm not clear about what the current status is, and it would be interesting to know what those impacts could be if we reduce those positions. So that's just a point of clarity or concern. Thank you.
Yeah, very good, Councillor Green. We will have the opportunity to ask those questions as we walk through them. Councillor Smart?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor, just one further clarification. So with regards to E, if we are adding in 1.6% of new requests, and then we're considering potentially 1.1% reductions in staffing later on, I'm just wondering if that other 0.5% that we're putting forward in E are other staff requests that we're not going to be considering, and if so, could they be clarified, or is that 0.5% relating to the other items under I? Still not entirely clear, thanks.
Sure. I'm not entirely sure on the 0.5, but go ahead, Ms. Legent.
Okay, thank you. Through your worship, thank you for the opportunity to clarify. I'm going to take a run at it. I might get help from my colleagues if I didn't quite get your where you were looking, because the number doesn't ring a bell. But If I may, so section E is, as I was saying, let's call it fully costed, full cost impact on tax. And then within the other section is the one-time revenue offset. So if we make a decision to remove one of the FTEs, say from the 1.6, the related revenue would disappear. So there's an offsetting decrease that would also be taken out. And so we're prepared to do that this evening. We have identified within our worksheets exactly those relationships. And so if there's any decision on one, the other will come out. And so what you're seeing, if you were to use the reduction scenario as your guide, you're seeing the net value. And so that essentially takes both of them out all at the same time. I think it's really important that I actually really loved how Mayor Murdoch framed it, that this has been layers of inputs from council, and so probably not as cohesive as we'd like if we knew this is where we would end up. But really the intention was just to provide you exactly what we could on a one page, and it is very different direction as we build the base budget. And then as we bring back reduction scenarios and how we decide to frame that, I am, of course, listening keenly on feedback. So we never want to see any members of council struggle. So we'll endeavor to improve in the future. But we do want to make sure you have what you need for this evening. So please do ask if there's any of those points of confusion.
Councillor Smart?
Yeah, thank you. I guess where I'm struggling is I didn't hear that E equals I. I heard that they do. That's why that was my question, and I just didn't hear it answered, and so it was confusing to me.
Yeah, maybe I can take a stab at that through you, Mayor, to Councillor Smart. It's E plus sum of G, which is the one-time or the financial management strategies, equals I. So for instance, the information technology management succession, which is valued at 146,100. Down below in G, there is some offsetting cost, which is then reflected in I in the next page. So if you were to remove the IT manager, it wouldn't just be removing the position that's in E, it would also be removing the one-time funding so that is offsetting that cost. Does that help? So it's a combination of E and G equals I.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think in fairness, anytime you're doing one-time funding, unless it's a term position, it is probably worth looking at the entirety of that cost. So in that case, there was 146,000, 80,000 is tax revenue, and 65,000 and that's in Appendix 4. So I think that's a helpful thing. As we go through those individual items, I would suggest we pull up Appendix 4 and we can walk through those so that we're all very clear at the end of the day about what it is that we're contemplating. Councillor Watson.
Yes, sorry, I have one, again, very basic question at the highest level. And that is with respect to category B and whether that 5.1% tax contribution is immutable, like it cannot be changed regardless of what comes below. It is feeding our tax rate increase and there's no discussion about it. Would that be accurate? I'm just want to, there's some room to, I see potentially some room to maneuver in A, C, D, E, F, and G, but would I be correct in saying there's none in B?
Ms. LaChance? Not a basic question. I think it's a really important question to ask. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much for the question, through your worship. The labor and contract obligations are those contractual obligations that we have, and they currently would have to reside and be costed and be included in the budget. There are directions that we can take for future to change the size of that obligation in the future. But that is obligations, and these are in some cases estimates. So those are our best estimates for 2026 and what those obligations will be.
Yes, so just to clarify, if things change below with respect that have staffing implications, that 5.1% also changes, right? Does it slightly? I mean, we have a core of staff, but there is some marginal adjustments that are suggested up and down below. So that 5.1% actually would vary with respect to that, but honoring what we are required to, how we are required to compensate and do other things with respect to being an employer. Is that correct?
Ms. LaChance?
Thank you, through your worship. So the approach to including the costs of new requests in the budget is that we do isolate the costs, and there is not subject to inflation because we are using the inflated cost, if you will. And that would be subject, though, to non-discretionary increases in the future if it's a permanent position. Yeah.
Councillor Watson? Ms. Hunt?
Yeah, sorry, in other words, because I want to be absolutely clear here, the line B2, the labor and benefit obligations, does not include any increases related to any new positions. They are separate.
That's what I was looking for. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I'm prepared to start going through this. So first question here really is that section A to G. I think that's really what we've been having questions about at this point. Are there any further questions? Again, I'm not going to seek council approval at this point. I just want to make sure that there's any sort of clarification like we've had. Any further questions on that section? Okay, so let's get to section M then, which is the consideration of new growth revenue. We heard the presentation, which was a total of $350,000 estimated. Staff recommendation here is that 230, which relates to current residents coming into the community, should be allocated towards our general revenue, and 120,000 be directed towards reserves. That's essentially the question in front of us. It's not the total amount, but really kind of that allocation ratio, if we see that as being reasonable or not. Is there any questions attached to that? Okay. Then we move to section, this is where we're getting into the nitty gritty of all of these things. And I think we'll just sort of walk through them and see where people are at. Number 8, H1 is the annual crossing guard program. I think I'll just give a little bit of history for anybody who wasn't on council a few years ago. This started off as a parent run piece where there was parents would do the crossing guards. It then became, the school district decided that they really couldn't rely, it was a lot more work than not to manage the parents, and so they hired an external nonprofit to do that work, to come in and do that work. And that nonprofit stopped doing that work, and they weren't able to replace them, or I think the costs were going up as well. And so they ultimately decided to turn those into internal staff positions that would be paid within that. We did contribute to support the volunteers, and then we contributed to support the nonprofit. And then when these converted to staff positions, we continue to provide that funding in there. It was a point of quite a bit of discussion, including suggesting that we may not do it in perpetuity, given the change of structure, but it has continued to this day. So I would say that I think that in fairness, this would be a hard one to cut out in 1 year, given that they probably have their budgets largely completed at this point as well. But if that was something that council was interested in, I would probably suggest that would be more of a notice given than a decision at this point not to fund it this year. But ultimately, that is up to council. If there's any interest at all, if they want to do it immediately or if they want to do it as a phased model. So that's kind of the context, because I think it's not thoroughly explained inside the document. I think some of that history probably got lost to the fogs of time. Councillor Green, did you wish to speak? Councillor Braithwaite and Patterson.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, actually, I would be in total agreement with that. I think it would be unfair of us to cut that out of our budget and not give them enough notice to be able to kind of turn on their heel and find that money elsewhere. So I would be in full favor of giving them a year's notice to say that that we could be cutting it next year. Thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and I tend to agree with Councillor Braithwaite on that. I guess, though, just going back to the historical of it, do all municipalities fund these, and do they fund them across the board for schools? And why is it not part of the education system budget?
Well, I don't know where it's at right now. At the time that we undertook it, it was the majority were funded, of municipalities did contribute, but it was not 100%. I couldn't tell you now because it's been a few years since that changeover happened. Sorry. That's something we could look into if we wish. Councillor Green?
Yes, thank you. I would support retaining this program this year. I think we talk a lot about pedestrian safety and safety generally, and I think this would be unfortunate if we cut this one, so I also support keeping it.
Any other discussion on that at this point? Okay, and then going to H2, this is coming out of one-time funding. It's not a direct impact on taxes this year, but obviously a philosophical discussion about whether or not to undertake this. In principle, this would probably want to continue over time if we thought we were going to do it. But most importantly, this year, the province, because of other factors, notably a disease outbreak in the interior, or have indicated to us that their funding is going 100% there. So there wouldn't be any grant funding available to support the project this year. So that's the costing is that amount this year, and we don't know in future. Councillor Braithwaite?
Thanks, Mayor. It should come as no surprise that I would love to see this come out of our budget, because I do not believe that it's something we should be funding. It should be funded by the province, and I understand they're not willing to do that this year. I would like to see it come out of our budget. Thank you.
Councillor Green?
And I will be speaking in support of retaining it, and that's not a surprise either. I've always believed in a scientific approach to this program. I think it would be unfortunate, given the amount of money that we have spent in the past on this project, to just suddenly end it now. Unfortunately, I was going to ask you, Mayor, I think you did an outreach to other municipalities on the potential of cost sharing, and I just wondered, could you remind me what the response was? Thank you.
Sure, we did ask them to return responses to Ms. Bay, and I don't think we've had much of a response. The two I've had from through political things have been an interest in participating. Are we able to bring that back? Interest in participating, but no commitment in budget this year. Ms. Bay, I'm not sure if you've heard from other jurisdictions.
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe we've heard back from the View Royal indicating that the matter had been dealt with by council or been received by council. I don't believe we've had any indication, yay or nay, from that, although I must admit I haven't listened to the council meeting yet at which that was discussed. Secondly, we heard from Esquimalt, from my staff to staff contacts at Esquimalt. I understand that they may be pursuing that, but not until a future year. So they're not planning on initiating the program in 2026.
Yeah, thank you, and good to have the recording back on. My understanding from Esquimalt is they still have this commitment to their current pilot project, and so that's happening this year. Any other discussion on that? Councillor Appleton, sorry, I did have your name on the list.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, yeah, I would speak for removing this from the budget. At the time of this, it's the same rationale that I provided at the time that we dealt with this at the council table. It is a levels of service discussion in my mind. We essentially, we have very, very little, when we talk about grants and upcoming provincial funding, I think it's very unlikely that we're going to see provincial funding restored to support this program. So essentially, even though this is for 1 year only, we're essentially making a preliminary commitment for a level of service increase in the community that the community did not weigh in on. So that was my same comment at that time. I don't believe that this is a long-term, I don't believe in funding it for a year because I don't believe in adding it to our core business delivery for the district.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to speak in favor of the program, but cautiously against implementing it this year for the precedent of funding it ourselves and potentially jeopardizing the provincial funding for next year. I would be in support of not going ahead with the funding this year so that we could potentially have more leverage with having it provincially funded and so that it could be a solid program continuing into the future.
Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and perhaps through Ms. Bay, could we get just a reminder of, for the 85,000 this year, what was the immunocontraceptive ratio that was going to be utilized, I guess? I almost feel like I should recuse because I have a herd in my yard, but that being said, in other words, if we eliminate it from this year's budget, what is a potential impact by not doing immunization?
Are you asking how many deer would have this applied to? Is that essentially the?
I guess this would cover so many contraceptive, whatever, however they apply them, utilization. And I mean, you can't, it is not directly relatable to the number of fawns, right? Sometimes they have one, sometimes they have three. But I'm just trying to gauge how many animals would receive the immunocontraception. And if we didn't do it, that would sort of get an indication of the growth.
Ms. Bay, I'll let you answer and I'll throw in my 2 cents. Go ahead.
Your Worship, our role as the district would be issuing a request for proposals for those services, and we would know through the responses to those requests for proposals how many deer would be proposed to be immunized. I think it depends on a lot of things, the contraceptive applied, the contractor, whether we're able to coordinate our efforts with other municipalities and therefore kind of lower our incremental costs. There's presumably a large fixed cost attributed to this. So unfortunately, I'm not in a position to speculate on that. We have been running the program until now with a number of volunteers that have lowered the cost to the district. So what this would actually look like as an enterprise, we're now going out for proposals for a former service providers. It would be dangerous for me to speculate. I guess the extent I could say is more than if we didn't have the program. But exactly what that would look like, I think, is hard to know unless we actually went out for quotes.
Thank you. I think you answered pretty much the way I would have. I think the important piece here is that the cost of the immunocontraception itself is very low. It's the cost of the people and getting the time spent. So the longer you spend, the more deer you can find, et cetera. So that's really the kind of the driving factor. So it's very hard to predict, I would say. If we can go to Councillor Patterson's backyard. That's most of them. Councillor Green.
Yeah, this is just a process question, and I wanted to ask if we were able to do what Ms. Bay has described, and that is put out an EOI and that sort of thing, and we didn't get, very good take-up, could this money then be reallocated mid-cycle? So if we didn't get the services that we needed through an EOI process or procurement process, could we then reallocate the funds at that point? I think I would rather see us at least try, and then if we don't get the service we need and the numbers of people we need, then we can revisit this issue. But I think to kill it now or cull it now would be unfortunate.
Thank you, Councillor Green. I'm just going to speak just in favor of this. I think there's a couple of things here that I think are worth noting. One, well, this would, if it continued, have a tax impact. I think there's a couple of things in the architecture and design of this program that allow it to have quite an impact by going forward. I think Councillor Green's point is good. If we go through the RP process, we don't get if the answer coming back is, well, we can deal with 5 deers for 85,000, we would not proceed with it. But I don't think that's the case. And I think that what we do know is that there's a very high level of deer that are dying in the community, and they're being offset right now by fawning. And this has been a top issue inside of Oak Bay for a long time. It still, I think, surprises me how much people have a concern about this, but it has a major impact. I mean, the cost of fencing in a yard to make it deer-proof is in the neighborhood of $20,000 or $30,000. So you multiply that out across multiple things. This is quite a low-cost way of really making a significant difference to the livability of the community. And even doing it 1 year, I think that the intention, the thing put forward by Urban Wildlife Stewardship Society argued that you could probably do this effectively every 3rd year and have quite an impact, because that's sort of the half-life of the contraception. So if we could knock down the fawning by, significantly, even if it was by 40 or 50 deer, or Public Works are picking up in the neighborhood of 70 or 80 deer off the street that have died every year in the community, it would have an impact. Long term, we would really need to get Saanich and Victoria on board, because the deer will continue to cross into the jurisdiction. But I do think that it's worth moving it forward in the sense that we can do it for 1 year. It will have a substantial impact, and in that time we can, A, demonstrate effectiveness, We can always stop it if we're not going to get a value for it. It doesn't have any impact one way or not on taxes this year. And we could then, I think, would make a much better sales pitch to our neighbors to say, hey, we've done this. We want to do it again in another 2 years. Here's the fixed cost. Here's the incremental cost. Would you be willing to share it? So I think there's lots of upsides to this that may not be captured just in the sort of the deer reduction portion of it, but in the sort of longer term value. Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks for your explanation. I just, I go back, though, on that we really haven't done anything in the past 2 years or 3 years around the deer. And so to implement it again now, this would be, to me, would seem like the perfect year to not do it since we haven't been doing anything for the past 2 or 3 years.
Okay, we'll get back to this as a vote in a bit, but I think, go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, Mayor, I think, I will support it, I think Councillor Green and yourself, you've articulated it well. I think it has merit carrying forward the program. Longer term, it does need support of other communities to make it viable, but I am interested in, certainly in doing this, because I do believe that it has had an impact on reduction of the fawning. But I also, I think that it will allow us to go forward and find out what the contract would be like. We may find that it comes back and it's not viable at the price we have in here, and then, of course, we have to revisit it. But I think this allows it at least to keep it as an active program for consideration, so I will support it.
Thank you, and we'll come back to this by vote. I'll go steps. I just think it's worthwhile for us because we have to consider this in the entirety. The reduce eliminate medical first responder, there is some explanation of this. This is really, I think, what Victoria did, correct, in that they are essentially notifying that they're not doing the medical first response, and so to reduce the load on the fire department. But we have, go ahead, Chief McDonald.
Thank you, Mayor. In response to your question, I'll provide an explanation on this. And this is a program really which is a service level that we are assisting the province in. We have a contract with the BC Emergency Health Services where we respond at their request on their behalf until we are relieved by them. So the cost of delivering the service in its entirety is approximately $60,000 for us. We've put this forward to outline, the total cost of delivering the service. If we were to eliminate it, the total cost savings would be the $60,000 that's outlined here, but that would come with the elimination of 100% of our call volume and the elimination of our licensing and the medical equipment that we have. So, the cost savings is not as great as what the City of Victoria enjoys, but we are trying to be very transparent with regards to what the cost of the service is. And then when we're looking in the context of what the impact is on our staffing and fire protection in relation to the staffing plan that's outlined in the fire master plan, so that you have the whole picture to support your decision making.
Okay, thank you for that. I was going to just, as again, this is sort of similar to SD 61. If this is something I think we want to contemplate, might think of this as we may want to just direct this as a report on the impacts, because I think there is a service level expectation in the community of time of response and these sorts of things. And so it's not just a dollar question, it is very much a sort of an overarching question of expected service levels in the community. So I think if that's something to consider, we may want to just, that's my thoughts on it, we may just want to consider this perhaps for 2027, but get some more information to guide that decision, because it's obviously clearly not going to be just a financial piece of this. Councillor Green?
Yes, excuse me, I would support to retain this program. This one, of all of them, has tremendous human impact, and it is, it is a service that people rely on when they see the fire truck coming. It means a lot. And I was in that situation myself some years ago with my own family situation, and I was so relieved when I saw them pull up in front of the house at the time. So it means a lot to people in this community, so I would not support reducing or eliminating it this year.
Councillor Braithwaite, Patterson?
I would agree with what the comments that Councillor Green just made. Thank you.
Councillor Patterson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I too agree with those comments. I think this is something that is really important in our community, and I thank our fire chief for giving us the background into this, and I'm just wondering if he could expand, and so if this was eliminated, what would the response be like then if a call came in?
Just because I just want to manage time. I didn't hear anybody here sort of speaking in favor of removing this, so I think I'm not going to put you on the spot right now, Chief. And then if we want that information, I would probably, and not wanting to do that this year, we might want to just have it as a motion arising to ask those kind of levels of information if it's something we want to explore. I don't see other hands, so I'm going to then move to H4, which is reduce active transportation funding by 50%. I think we understand what this is. Can I just, for my clarification, this is transportation funding increases similar to the infrastructure funding piece, and this is something that we have in our plan happening essentially every year, correct? There's an incremental increase tied to this. Perhaps, Ms. LaChance, you could just remind us of the structure of this.
Yes, thank you. To your worship, it is a phase-in plan. You correctly referenced that. It's a 0.57, 0.56% increase across 5 years. And so it's a stacking that essentially raises the annual contribution from revenue to a target level. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Smart.
Thank you. Through Mayor to staff, I guess I just wondered if we could have a refresh of the history of this. So this active transportation funding was decreased by 50% previously, so a 5-year plan was going to be funded over 10 years. So I'm just wondering, like, structurally, if this is considered today, is this essentially overall since the beginning of our 5-year plan, like conceptually a 75% increase, and is it just for 1 year, or is it potentially expanding our 5-year program to 15 years? I just want to understand really what the decision is today.
Good question.
Thanks.
Ms. LaChance?
Yes, I was just trying to follow the numbers. Thank you. Through your worship. So yes, essentially, when there is a pause on the increase, you will lose that increase over the next 4 years. You could reinstate the increase in a following year, capturing some of that target, but it does essentially extend the number of years if the total target is retained. You're correct.
Thank you. And I think there's two halves here. One of them is a funding timeline, and then there's also sort of the planning timeline. I'm not sure that my recollection is that the planning timeline was 10 years and the funding timeline was 5 years. I don't know if you remember the answer to that, Ms. LaChance, or might go to Mr. Rennick.
Yeah, I can start us off to your worship, just knowing the financing side of it. So we definitely have a model that's been built out, and of course we're raising money with a matching balanced budget expenditure view. So yes, you're quite right to bring up that there's a 10-year expenditure forecast or plan that's currently being assessed for implementation plan. The idea around the transfers from revenue was that money would be coming into those reserves, would essentially be being saved and then be being spent on time with that available funding. And so there is a distinction in terms of the increases that you'll see for revenue and when that funding will be timed. I'm going to look to my colleague because he was here during those deep discussions and how that model was determined by council.
Thank you. I don't think any of our conversations are that deep, but we'll go. Ms. Hunt?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And I think it's important to note that the current annual contribution is $246,000 a year. And so this year, that was going to be an additional $255,000. I let Steve talk to, the program itself, but one of the reasons we put this forward is that when we brought forward the feedback in January, a number of the smaller projects, the interim treatments, were going to happen until 27, 28, and then the larger projects, which were multi-million dollars, were later on in the plan. That said, this level of funding is not going to fund multi-million dollars worth of projects, but there are a number of funding sources that go into the active transportation program. And I'll let Steve, I just wanted you to know, though, that the current contribution is $246,000.
Thank you, Ms. Hunt. That's helpful. Mr. Rennick?
Thank you very much through the chair. Adding on to what my colleagues have said, we did feel that if there was a year that council wanted to consider a lower taxation increase, that because the primary activity in this program this year is Haltane and Henderson, which are actually being funded out of carry forwards from last year, in 2027, the construction projects that were envisioned are relatively minor. The 2027 funds, there's not a lot of big ticket projects. It's a lot of design and engagement type work. As Ms. Hunt noted, some of those larger projects, such as Cedar Hill Cross Road and enhancements on North Henderson, those were programmed out in 2028 in the draft material that council saw. So we felt that given that council has directed that staff return with an implementation plan, this was maybe a good year that we could be a little bit nimble, and also council will still have an opportunity on those larger projects to intervene when we have a better sense of the grant landscape, and we see kind of how that's shaping up in 2028.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Rennick. Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Director Rennick, then could you clarify then, overall, if this goes ahead, is this simply delaying funding, or is this removing funding permanently? And if it's removing funding permanently, is it just for this year that we will have $127,500 less for this 1 year, and then next year it will go back up to $246,000?
Go ahead, Mr. Rennick.
Thank you. Through the chair, ultimately that is up to next year's council to decide. They would have options of essentially doubling to make up for a missed contribution, or retaining the same schedule of increases. I see Ms. Hunt keying in as well.
Finish your thought first.
Thanks very much, Steve. I just wanted to just mention it's 204. The 246 won't change. This was going to be an increment of another 255, and so we're taking half of that increment. So it's 246 plus 127 will be continuing on, rather than 246 plus 255 will be continuing on.
Councillor Smart.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, then just to understand the 5-year plan then, so this plan would have us spending less this year in a time when our residents need some affordability. And then next year, the sort of default that would go to council would be the 246 with the potential of adding on the missed amount from this year. Am I understanding that correctly? So that the 5-year plan isn't reducing every year by 127,000.
Go ahead, Ms. LaChance.
Thank you, through your worship. Quite right, Mr. Rennick had identified that it is at the will of council what that direction would be. A similar reduction was made for the fire master staffing plan last year, and we have resurfaced that this year for council direction. So we make sure that where there is a multi-year phased in funding plan, that there is a check back to the original intention of that program, and making sure that if there's a decision point for council and some kind of interruption in funding, that we're making council aware of that. So it would in fact come back. We would, in the case of fire, we haven't embedded it in. We've left it for council's decision to embed that catch-up payment, if you will, increasing not only the already planned increase, but the we'll call it the skipped 50% increase.
Mr. Smart.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to staff then. So what I'm understanding is this is very similar to what we did with the sort of delayed funding then for the funding with fire last year. So we're not, in a sense, suggesting a decrease every year for the next few years with this, is what I'm hearing.
Correct. This is we can only really deal with this year, and next year may have nothing, or it may have 10 times as much. But what's going to be in the default is going to be the prescribed scheduled amount every year.
That's
Mr.
correct. Through your worship, thank you for the opportunity to clarify that. We would be making those recommendations as well, based on the timing of spending and the surety of that spending. And that's where Mr. Rennick's response comes in to talk about future years being the larger spend years. And then also Ms. Hunt clarifying that other funding sources will be needed. And so there is time still to intervene, assess the capacity of that program. So to sum it up, sorry, I'm very long-winded this evening. I get very excited about budget. Sorry, is that, yeah, we would be recommending just this year at this point, because we know that the program and planning and implementation is imminent.
Thank you for that. Councillor Appleton?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I appreciated Mr. Rennick's comments just with respect to timing of investments, because I think it relates to my question. Last year, what I'm getting from this is that that staff have reviewed potential upcoming spends and, made the recommendation for the reduction in active transportation funding based on the incoming work plan. That relates to my question in the sense that last year included as an option for tax reduction scenarios was also evaluating whether or not council wanted to consider a reduction in the ongoing contribution for infrastructure upgrades, the ongoing 2% per year infrastructure upgrade item. And there was a debate around that at the last financial plan meeting, whether that was to be possibly reduced to 1%. Ultimately, that was not supported by council, but I'm just wondering whether the same rationale and criteria for review also kind of weighed in to a potentially including, because it's not included this year. Is it because there are critical spends on the infrastructure component coming up this year that require that a 1% reduction or a reduction of any amount is not feasible as part of this reduction scenario?
Ms. LaChance?
Thank you very much, through your worship. So the infrastructure funding, the infrastructure levy, the 2% increase annually is also a multi-year council program to reach capacity levels. The difference between the active transportation program, for example, is that levy suggestion or recommendation of 2% per year is actually a forecast forward on a 100-year calculated asset funding gap. Of course, expenses related to that are, very much not assured. But we do know when we do those projections that the size and scale of that funding gap requires a certain amount of funding on hand in those future years. Each year that we would defer savings, when you're talking about that magnitude of years, you are losing investment income and you are losing the trajectory and timing of replacements, those large replacements in the future. I would suggest that the annual transfer isn't as tied to current year capital expenditure or even the 5-year. It is being put aside so that in the future the correct measurably reasonable levels of reserves are on hand for replacements.
Thank you. Ms. Hunt?
Sorry, thank you, Your Worship. I would just like to add, you just need to look at the borrowing, right? The borrowing is for road rehabilitation, the storm sewer rehabilitation, which are all replacement projects. And so if we had to pause the contribution to reserve and not have the sufficient funding, we would be borrowing more. Those are needed projects. So I just wanted to highlight that.
Thank you. Councillor Appleton? Anything else? Okay. Other discussion? Nobody's spoken yet to the merits or lack thereof of the change. My general feeling on this one, given that this is the first year we've actually had sort of a substantial active transportation plan, at least for the cycling infrastructure piece of it, recognizing there's more than just that. And I, certainly as noted, there's a huge gap between sort of the the full scale version of that was separated, et cetera, versus the sort of the shorter term possibilities of doing primarily painting and some of that sort of work. And I don't think we've finalized that decision yet. So given that, I think given the amount of funding that's in there currently, this suggestion of not reducing it, but reducing the increase is I would see to be reasonable. Certainly to look forward, we can have that debate, but if there any other discussion on that one before we move on? Okay. We're now into section I, which is, these are into core service levels. And again, these are really tied, well, I1 to I3 here are related to, not related to section 4. So there was a question earlier on, I think Councillor Green asked about what does reduced front counter hours mean? It's tied to the finance department, so I think I'll give this to you, Ms. LaChance. If you want to hand it to somebody else, please do so.
Thank you, through your worship. So just to provide a bit of context about this suggested reduction, it's not intended to any way be a suggested reduction that we would take lightly. As outlined in Appendix 12, the exercise that we can immediately affect taxation is to review our operating budget and look for those auxiliary hours or auxiliary budgets that we can vary and possibly do something different. Looking for those items to request to council or suggest to council. The front counter hours came up there. It's within my department. I oversee the reception as well as the financial services team. That'll be utility billing, accounts receivable, accounts payable, and then we've got, of course, our accounting and financial reporting team. So at the front counter, we have a number of positions that are primarily rooted in transaction processing. And they are transacting higher volumes, as we've reported to council, and they often need periods of long concentration. So when we consider varying our auxiliary hours, what we're doing essentially is reducing their coverage at the front counter. And so where the receptionist maybe has time off or is on leave, we're bringing in auxiliary staff to cover that. So our service level is 8:30 to 4:30 every working day throughout the year. There are no exceptions to that. You might come in and find a sign up. It's usually because they've just run off to get some lunch or something. But typically we are covering that desk at all hours that we're open. Other departments have successfully found efficiencies with the front counter. We, of course, would be very mindful in implementing it. We're looking for non-peak hours, and we're looking for the least amount of disruption. We do take great pause when we're collecting revenues, making that process easy for taxpayers and ratepayers to be able to settle their outstanding bills with us or ask questions. So we would be looking to provide some mitigating good communication, but it would allow us to reduce our costs to the presented value here pretty much immediately in 2026. We just wouldn't be bringing in that auxiliary coverage.
Note here, the amount of money we're talking about in the scheme of these things is $15,000. So I want to keep our conversation on this reasonably proportionate. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
Thank you very much, and through you, and thank you for the context. It really means a lot, and that was the point of my question, was to understand the context. So that is the reception piece that you're talking about primarily, that front desk reception function.
Yes, thank you, through your worship. So it would be both the front reception as well as the billing desks that get covered. Yeah.
And my only comment is that, again, human impact, often that is the face of this organization, and you never get a second chance to make a first impression, and first impressions have always been quite positive at that particular location, but I understand the need for efficiency. So I'm just hoping, it sounds like you're going to take all of that into consideration as well, but just to remember that this is an important human function again for the municipality, and I appreciate you very much your explanation. Thank you.
Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you. I agree. I mean, it is the very first thing that anybody who comes to the municipality sees is that front person. And so I would really prefer not to see this taken out of the budget. It's a very small amount, as the mayor mentioned, and I think that it's important for us, for anybody who's coming into the municipality, especially for the very first time, to be welcomed and or accepted into a welcoming environment. So I would love to see this stay in the budget. Thank you.
The discussion, not seeing it. I might just flag one quick thing here, Ms. LaChance. You know, one of the things that happens, and I appreciate this is sort of for the financial ask of things, is that we get asked every year for people who find our limited payment options, which I understand is debit and check. So a lot of people come in and use up our staff time by dealing with those sort of more cumbersome payment methods and obviously they can pay through the bank and so forth. Is there, appreciating it would have to be added on cost, another 2.5% or whatever for the transaction cost, but is there any possibility of perhaps reducing the amount of use at the front? Because even if it's not this position, there's a lot of impact on, I see it every day, of people coming up and it's all hands on deck to make sure that we're servicing people really well. That takes them away from their day job. So just curious if there's any possibility of us perhaps allowing for card payments, even recognizing that people would have to pay the delta in the transaction fees, and that might reduce some of the at camera or at counter transactions. Through me to you.
Yes, back to you, Your Worship. I appreciate the question, and you in part answered it for me. So definitely within a local government context, we're looking for keeping costs as low as possible just by processing transactions. That way you are adding a fee on top of the cost recovery from the community. That said, there can be a business case, absolutely, for driving some of those payments, driving more of those payments online. And using system platforms to process in a way more efficiently. I would suggest, based on just my observations of being here, that some of that front counter interaction would continue. It is a touch point. People regularly come in. In some cases, people that are alone and they come in to have chats and have face-to-face. I have to share. I apologize, but I do think there's there's a certain rate that we would be able to affect, and that is a business case we can bring back.
Thank you for that. And speaking personally, I don't support that. I mean, for the amount of money. I don't think it would have a substantive impact on the budget and again, leaving that to staff to rejig the use of the staff that we have, but that's certainly from my perspective. We move then to reduce graffiti cleanup and beautification. I have a question on this one, but I'll go to members of council first. So my question, go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And is this an average cost that we are spending every year? I just noticed that there does seem to be a remarkable improvement over what we were experiencing. And so I'm just, sometimes it only takes a couple of people to do an awful lot of graffiti damage around a district. So is this kind of a lot amount, or do we spend it, or are we underspending? Like, I'm just trying to get a feel for the overall effectiveness of the program.
Ms. LaChance?
Thank you very much. I'm going to invite my colleague to speak
Mr.
to
Rennick.
that budget does reside in the engineering department. Thank you.
Perfect. Mr. Rennick?
Thank you very much, through the mayor. This service was established in the 2024 financial plan, and the amount that was established at the time was kind of a best guess. We have been using that funding occasionally to pay for contractors to do graffiti removal and occasionally to pay staff to do graffiti removal. We are not spending that full amount. I would also say that the presence of graffiti in the community is complicated and has as much to do with perpetrators and what those people are doing with their time as it does with our timeliness of responding. But essentially, the reason that we've offered up the two scenarios, one is a 50% reduction in the funding and one is a roughly 90% reduction in the funding, is that we do feel that that is an area that's potentially a little bit over budgeted right now relative to what we're spending and what we're seeing. We also, prior to the establishment of that funding in 2024, we were still doing graffiti removal. It was just simply coming out of other cost centers in the Public Works budget. So we felt that that was one that council could reconsider being a relatively newly created service and one that is not being spent to its full budgeted amount thus far.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks so much, Mayor, and through you. And also, I think this question would also be for Mr. Rennick as well. But BC Transit and BC Hydro do have to pay for the removal of graffiti off anything that has to do with their assets, I think. And is some of the costs on graffiti that's done within the municipality, say if someone gets caught who's done graffiti, is that a recoverable cost from someone who has actually like done the graffiti, or?
Mr. Rennick?
Through the mayor, it's not unheard of, but I'm seeing the face that Chief Shannon is making. It's not the easiest way. That being said, we have certainly seen young offenders being required to clean up their own messes as part of restitution. I think that one's easier. I could defer to my colleague if there's an interest there.
That's in the BC Transit question?
Yes, sorry. Transit is responsible for maintaining their assets, and Hydro is responsible for maintaining theirs.
Thank you. Councillor Appleton?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just very quickly through you to Mr. Rennick. Mr. Rennick just mentioned a couple of numbers about sort of a 50 and 90% reduction. I see two numbers here. Scenario A showing about 110 and the other one showing 63. So if I assume that the baseline is about 225, then we've got 50% and about 75% rather than 90%. Do I have that right?
I think the total is about 125.
Through the mayor, yes, exactly. It's 126. So that 63,000 is exactly 50%.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, my question on this one was just, it relates to a little bit deeper into the discussion here as we're getting into section or Appendix 4. There's an ask in there, and it was touched on in the presentation last week around traffic services, about sort of building that team because it was more efficient and useful as a two-person team than a one-person team. And I'm just contemplating, is that something, if we were to eliminate this position, but add to that traffic services piece, is that sort of an area that might also take on some of the graffiti removal work as needed? Because I appreciate it's an episodic need. It kind of comes in waves. Is that something that we could maybe reasonably look at as a compromise here? Go to you, Mr. Rennick, because I think it's more of an operational question. And I always struggle with these things. We're getting almost into operations when we're talking about positions, but I'm just trying to find some mechanism here by which we can kind of look at the whole of all of this. Over to you, if you can answer the question.
Yeah, thank you. Through the mayor, that program was created as a service as opposed to actually being an FTE in 2024, and that was to give operational flexibility. We do kind of look at some of the laborers in public works as a pool and sort of say we're going to deploy them to different tasks as things are needed. I think it's very astute to put this service up against the traffic services, because from our perspective, if you were only going to do one, the traffic services one, having a more direct impact on road user safety, that's kind of why this one was put into that list. Sort of thinking of, I would really rather that we invest in the traffic services of the two, if that helps.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, and my take of this personally, since we're talking to the item, is that I do think we have an obligation. I think we find as a cascading piece, I appreciate it's more complicated than being on top of it, but there's definitely a reduced interest in tagging things if there's a very quick cleanup of those tags, and people will learn to find places that their things will last. And so I do think it's really important for us to react quickly and efficiently when it happens. So I'm sort of supportive of this as long as there's some mechanism there within this that we can make sure that that work continues. And if that's shifting the naming and these things, then that's fine with me. But I would, if that was to stop doing this service, I wouldn't support that. But what I'm hearing from staff is that would continue. We may just need to reshift the terminology as it goes in there. Okay. Any other questions on that one? All right. And then we have reduced facilities maintenance. And so perhaps, Ms. Lachance, you can provide a bit more detail on that.
Thank you. Through your worship and to you. So the reduced facilities maintenance is not necessarily reducing some of those very important maintenance duties that we have just newly established these budgets for. What it is as we've gotten to understand the buildings with my colleague, Mr. Graham, having been here now through a few cycles with the buildings, and the building portfolio. He's come to understand those budgets better, and there has been some reductions, as we talked about last meeting, with some of the contracts that have been renegotiated. When we look across those budgets, we can combine line items and are thinking that there's a way to, and if you have a supply budget or maintenance budget in a number of buildings, that you can combine those budgets and maybe not carry as much room, if you will. So we're recommending a reduction from that standpoint. And then also that some of the maintenance is cyclical, so you don't need that money every single year. There's a simple financial tool to help us with that. It's establishing a maintenance reserve that would be operating in nature, operating funded, but then would be able to be drawn on as some of those costs would fluctuate from year to year. It's very common in a budget that you might carry some very sort of ancillary line items and draw on them and regularly probably spend close, but there are some years you don't. And that is impact on taxation that may not be necessary, and we saw that opportunity in these budgets. So what we're recommending here is a reduction to those budgets, but some of the money will be redirected to a maintenance reserve, and there'll also be an operating budget retained.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you. Thanks for that explanation, because I don't want to see a reduction in our facilities maintenance overall. And I go back to my comments last week and specifically around the rec center and how proud we should be of our rec center because it's still standing and in great shape, and the Crystal Pool is not. And so I don't want to see any money come out of, especially now when we have a facilities program now where we're keeping track of our facilities in a much better way. I would hate to see a reduction in the facilities maintenance, but what I understand you saying is that it's just you're bringing together the different maintenance programs throughout the municipality, and that's where the reduction comes from. It's not in a reduction of service to the maintenance.
Mr. Graham? How did we fix that last time? Oh, there we go. That worked. Go ahead.
Thank you, and through the chair, without getting technical, the short answer, we're pooling our risk. So if the chance of something going wrong and needing a higher level of maintenance on a building is less likely that to happen to all our buildings simultaneously, so we can pool our contingencies and be able to reduce it that way. It wouldn't be an impact on our service levels.
Thank you. Any other discussion? I just have a question because there's also in the Appendix 4, under some of the positions that are in front of us for consideration, it's facilities management coordination, and that's so I just trying to get a clarification. The language of that sounds very much like it's a management position, but I understand from a brief conversation that with staff that may not be sort of, it's more of it's the person who's actually coordinating or managing the all of the work that needs to go on. So I'm just trying to understand the offset here. We have a sort of a reduction in the reserve and a consideration of an additional position or part position to help with facilities management. And so perhaps staff could just touch a little bit on the relative value of those two things. The fund that we're talking about here, which is a pure sort of capital funding pooled piece versus the positional piece, and the relative value of those two items as we consider that going forward. Ms. LaChance?
Thank you to your worship, and of course I might ask my colleague Mr. Graham to jump in. He can always provide some more color and context. So just to start off, the facilities coordinator position, you're quite right, is intended to be a coordinator position, really actually doing a lot of the boots on the ground in terms of capital project delivery. As you've seen in the capital plan, even though we've rephased, our capital plan still remains fairly robust, so that we can get out of the emergency repairs and break fix. So the capital program requires that support. So it requires the support scheduling, communications, procurement, timeliness of execution, And that support is primarily supported through Mr. Graham at this point, with a coordinator position as well. With the building profile changing, and with the capital program seeing some major projects coming through in the next 10 years, that position is considered essential and core to delivering those slightly more riskier capital projects that, if we delay or we aren't able to turn around some elements of those project timelines, they can end up costing more money. So this is really thought to be an efficiency addition to the core.
Thank you. Anything you should add, Mr. Graham?
Thank you. To your worship, the actual name that I have, it's kind of a working name right now, is the Asset Management Project Coordinator. So as our buildings get larger, as our buildings age, we're starting to take on larger renewal projects that might be a 2-year cycle. First year's design, tender, and the second year's construction. So coordinating all that on a multiple project level is getting to be very difficult with our small staff. So this would assist with that, keeping things running.
Thank you for the clarification. I'm sorry, a little bit of a sidetrack from the specifics here, but they seemed related in my mind, so I connected them. Any other discussion? Okay. Then we have the administrative assistant, and this is for the engineering department. I think it's well explained in here, but actually we're into Appendix 4 now, so take a break, stretch. I just, out of courtesy for people who are joining us either in the room or online, this is subject to public input, and we're going through this in a very granular way as we get to how to deal with financial stuff. And I think probably most of the public comments, if any, are going to be probably more general in nature. So as we start going, before we start going through perhaps the specific positions and options that we have here, maybe this is an effective time to take a quick break and just invite the public, members of the public, just to address council. So if people are comfortable with that, I'll do that. So if you're online and you wish to talk to council related to the financial plan process that's in front of us here, you can talk to specifics, you can talk to generalities, whatever you wish. If you're online, you can use the reactions tab within Zoom and raise your hand that way. And if you're in the room here, you can just come to the podium and we'll take your comment. There is someone online, so I will go there first. We have Tim Taddy online. If you wish to unmute yourself, you've been here before, so you can help demonstrate a good process. Just state your name, municipality of residence.
Your name's Tim Taddy, Oak Bay.
We can, Mr. Taddy, and if you could just demonstrate, yeah, you've done it perfectly, name and municipality, you don't have to give an address, and you have up to 3 minutes to talk to council. Please go ahead.
Great, thank you, I'll be brief. Thank you for providing this opportunity. I've been away and unable to participate, and I've been listening with a great deal of interest. When I filled out the recent survey in the last year, one of the little frustrations I had was that there was talk about, would you support increased taxes? Would you support decreased services? And I'm one that actually wants to maintain a tax base to keep up with the capital expenditure and the services as much as possible. We've been running Oak Bay like a strata council that doesn't look after depreciation and passes it on to the next generation, and I'm certainly one that doesn't want to do that. But having said that, I believe that these last year's and this year's budget increases, tax increases, are just not sustainable. I note that there's significant municipalities in BC that are looking at proposals of 4.5%, 5%, and one of the, in both that questionnaire and for feedback and in this whole budget process, there's a whole lot of information, but what I don't see, I'm old enough to have been around when there was zero-based budgeting. And I was involved with not-for-profit organizations with significant budgets that relied on provincial funding and were required to zero-based budget. And that meant departments, department heads, and the organization itself had to really drill down and make sure that their departments were efficient, not look at just increasing staff or increasing wages, but look at their departments. What efficiencies could we go through? What do we need, the processes that we're doing? Do we need the staff that we're doing? Are there ways we can be more efficient? And frankly, I don't see that in this budgeting, and I don't see anything that tells me that we've really drilled down in that respect, or that we can compare to what the growth is in costs have been in the last 5 years. So I just basically think whether you do it now or next year, it's not sustainable, and we need some sort of, maybe not zero-based budgeting, we need to be looking at inflation, and we need to be drilling down and seeing what efficiency we can get. It's difficult. I appreciate your comments at the beginning, Mayor, and I wish you luck, but I just would like to see more rigorous analysis of where we can save money, not just cut programs, but could we deliver them more efficiently? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taddy. I might just pass that question on to Ms. LaChance in terms of, I think, our approach here is kind of a bit of a hybrid of zero-based and longer term, but perhaps I can just give it to Ms. LaChance to at least give a context for that. Please go ahead.
Thank you, through your worship. Absolutely, those are very true words, that zero-based budgeting basically involves breaking down the budget, looking for ways of costing and associating those costs with a program level. And so it differs depending on the type of program. But an example of where we do it in this budget is on the line, 50% of our operating costs are coming from salaries, labor costs. And we do a zero-based budgeting approach on that. So every year we're doing an audit of every single role that's been activated, that's been hired, that's in place, what that level, committed level is. And then also, we're, of course, this year we did a full audit on the FTE count in relation to that cost, and ensured that the representation of the salary line items relates to that full-time equivalent chart that's been reported. So that's where we would speak to and say that there's a hybrid approach. It's not just on the 50% though. There are other elements when it comes to O&M budgets. In some cases, we're looking at the amount of equipment that needs support, the number of hours, maintenance, and then we're backing into some of those budgets. But what we're looking for is, and it's probably recreation examples that I'm missing, but it really does come down to the service planning, work planning, and how that's associated with the costs.
Thank you for that comment. And Mr. Taddy, I do want to just acknowledge that it is difficult in any governmental organization to find that there is a lag between the costs and the value, and sometimes the costs don't fall on us and they fall on other people, but the value falls to us. So there is a structural difficulty in government in general, and certainly our intention here is to do a lot of that work, making sure that we're doing our due diligence. I have Ms. Matthews online as well. Do you wish to unmute yourself and introduce yourself?
Hi.
Hello. Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Can you just state your name and municipality of residence, just for the record?
Kathleen Matthews, I live in Oak Bay.
Thank you.
The first thing I want to say is, in attending these sessions and you ensuring that they are publicly available, I have learned so much, and I have so much respect for the, increased respect for the efficiency and the knowledge of the staff, and especially for how important it is for our councillors and our mayor to have this expertise and be able to understand this. So I'm just grateful for that. But what I just also want to say is thank you for, as a senior in this community, this first responder program is so significant for older people. And having just broken my arm, I didn't need the first responder. The ambulance got there very quickly. But, you know, hearing that fire truck come is such a reassurance, and I'm really grateful for those councillors that, and for the mayor who wish to continue that program. So that's all I want to do, is to thank you, and to thank you for having this public so that people like me can understand better what municipal government is all about. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Matthews. Does anybody in the room, there's one person here, so I'm going to invite forward to speak, someone who understands municipal finances and operations fairly well.
So good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Christopher Costin. I live in Victoria. I appreciated, Mr. Mayor, what
Are you sure you don't live in Oak Bay, Mr. Costin?
I do. But I count myself as living in the greater community of Victoria. I appreciated the remarks you made at the beginning, because I wanted actually, after listening to the last presentation last week, just try and put a bit of context into your deliberations, which will not be easy. I sat in your position, obviously, for 15 years running budgets, and it's actually lovely to listen to it, but I do not want to get into the weeds tonight about deer, et cetera, et cetera. So my comments really are meant to try and help, and I thank you for this opportunity. And I wanted to talk about the contextual statements that I see that you need to consider. 20 years ago, the population of Oak Bay was approximately the same as today. The geography, 4 square miles, was the same. The traffic grid was the same. And the community's desire for good recreation facilities, good parks, good schools, good shops, low crime, is basically the same as it has been almost forever. Then as now, the residents pay basically 97% of the taxes that the council levies, which is, as you were saying earlier, about half of what the taxation is that appears on your tax notice. What has dramatically changed in the past 25 years, actually since the penny farthing opened, has actually been the staffing and the costs of running the municipality. Let me give you one example and one fact of what I'm talking about, and you can sort of chew on it tonight. 25 years ago, HR was done by each department head, overseen by the CAO, with negotiations done through the GVLRA. I think we had one strike, and that lasted half a day. All the grievances were dealt with in-house. Today we have HR departments in this municipality. I believe we have communication staff. In those days, the communication was done by you, sir, or by me, and that was it. This has resulted, this increase in staff, with this building, which then, 20 years ago, easily housed administration, is now downstairs. There was archives, there was actually nursing at one time, and now this building is full with Oak Bay engineering staff downstairs where the archives were. Right next door in Athlone Court, I ran into 2 engineers today over there. And your lease payments are now beginning, and this actual question was actually asked at the last budget meeting, your lease payments are beginning now to catch up to what it costs to run this building. Now we have a public works yard that is full. We have a new fire equipment garage in the middle of what was a public parking area, and we have a request for a new public safety building. This is a bit like running a business where we keep on putting money into the building and staffing, but we have no new customers. Going back to how this municipality is actually growing. We have no new customers, or very little, coming in the front door. So in the 1 minute I've got left, what would I suggest? First, focus on revenues. As an example, I tried last week to go to the Oak Bay Marina. It's closed. There's no sign in the window. There's no menu. There's nothing. It is shuttered. There's no hours posted. That location is probably the best on Vancouver Island for a restaurant. Used to produce, or should be producing, $500,000 in revenue, and you're not getting, as far as I know from your statements, anything like that. Secondly, stop hiring until you grow your revenues, not your taxes, other than inflation, and as what was talked about tonight, the growth that comes from new construction, which should get higher. Measure outputs. Third thing, report quarterly. Technology is meant to improve output. Fourth, prioritize need to do over nice to do. Fifth, look at your operating surpluses. The last 3 years, your operating surpluses are quite significant. 6, run your rec centers like a business. I'm being very glad that Councillor Braithwaite has mentioned this twice in the past week. I heard last week that Henderson was now at 94% cost recovery. Look back at the figures from 1975 and 2003 when the rec center was subject to a referendum for public support. Cost recovery was essential, as it was at the Windsor Pavilion. What's the cost recovery model for the new building at Carnarvon? The Windsor Pavilion was built for $2.3 million. The money being talked about tonight was $32 million, and I haven't seen a business case for that yet. 7, assign some of your reserves to risk management. If you are to move to an Oak Bay police investigating major crimes, you will need a fund to fund major incidents. Oak Bay had one when I was in your position, and we had to find $1 million to cover that one investigation. We sent that at the time off to Saanich because we couldn't take the risk. If we bring it back in-house, which is a council decision, then you need to offset that risk. Okay, we don't live in a bubble in Oak Bay. We have a war in Iran, which will affect your costs. Whatever your costs are tonight, if this war lasts, they will be affected. Connie is increasing defense budgets.
Mr. Costin, I'm not going to cut you off, but I am going to ask, you're at little more than twice the time normally allotted, and you've had some great points. I just want you to, if you could, work towards wrapping it up.
Well, I promise you I'll never speak again at council for the next 10 years. So this is my second time in 15 years. So remember, I'll make it 1 minute. So remember, Connie is going to increase your defense budget. He's got all kinds of plans, and all those will affect grants that this municipality has when you triple it down. Look at the provincial budgets. There's a strong possibility that the province is going to be downgraded, and that's going to affect your bottom line if you actually borrow money. At a meeting that I read in the Oak Bay News, the word was used, untenable. What does untenable mean when talking about this budget? That's a position, argument, situation that cannot be defended, maintained, or supported against criticism or attack. Thank you for your time. I just hope this helps. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Costin, for your comments. And it's okay for you to come here every 15 years. I hope that it wasn't taken poorly by anybody online. Mr. Costin is well known to myself and members of council as a former mayor, and really appreciate his contributions to this community over many years. I think 24 years, is that correct, in total in council? 15 years as mayor. Anybody else online that was interested in speaking to council at this time? If so, if you could just raise your hand, or if you're calling into the 855 number on the agenda package, you have to hit *9 to raise your hand. I don't see anybody online indicating their wish to speak at this time. So I'm going to come back to this table, and I think that was probably a helpful break for us before we get on to the next section as well. All right, let us go then to section I-4 through I-11. This is really related to Appendix 4, and just cognizant of time, I want to make sure that we are sorry, I'm just bringing up my Appendix 4. Just want to make sure that we're stepping this in a reasonably timely way. There are a number of items that are in here that have costs and so forth, so I think I'm just going to go through. These ones are obviously provided to us in the last go-around. There is a substantial amount of information attached to them, so it's really going to come down, I think, to whether people are comfortable with some, none, or all of these items. And I might suggest, just because I think some of the questions of which are important, it may be worthwhile for us to, at some point, if we're struggling with which is, more critical, one or the other, or something of that nature, to perhaps allocate something that we see as reasonable and allow those operational decisions to happen at a staff level. Because I think there is some danger of us prioritizing things that we don't have the operational insights into, knowing which is the more critical of the items. And then, of course, I just want to reflect as well, we do have some additional positions that are flagged as potential and or recommended, but not included in the budget. Those are in section L, which we'll get to a little bit later. So going through Appendix 4, we have the IT manager, finance and IT asset management, but business analyst and accounting clerk, time entry clerk, manager of recreation and cultural services, and corporate services records management position. Some of these are, and then we have the concrete repairs, et cetera, for the engineering and public works. Well, those are, I'm getting into the additional excluded. So yeah, those are the ones up, finishing up manager of recreation and cultural services. So I'm not going to go through them one by one. I think I'm just going to ask if there's members of council who have questions about the specifics of what they would do, what the urgency is, those kind of questions. We can take those at this time. Are there questions from council? Councillor Braithwaite?
Yeah, Mayor, I think I was trying to ask this question before, but of the new FTE requests, do we know which positions are required immediately for regulatory or safety reasons, and which could be perhaps phased in over 2 or 3 years? Thank you.
You did raise that question earlier, so I'm happy to give that. There's a lot of positions here, so I'm not sure if this is something to give to Ms. Hunt or to Ms. LaChance or to individual heads, but Ms. LaChance, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, thank you very much, Your Worship, and through you. I will start us off. I would be happy to have Ms. Hunt jump in as well when we talk about our approach to planning for FTEs related to the work plans, prioritization of those. There is a fair amount of work that we do in the fall leading up to packaging new requests for council. Mind you, she was new at that time, so no pressure. But just to provide that context that there are discussions that we have before getting to this table. Included in the additional supplementary information in Appendix 16 are all of those FTEs, including the optional, with tags on them, if you will, or check marks. There's a couple there that are identified as regulatory. That would be the traffic services under Appendix 4 new request, the records coordinator under the new optional investments, and then the deferred fire staffing capacity as outlined in the master plan relates back to regulatory requirements. We also, I took the opportunity to identify a couple of other drivers there for council's attention. So that's risk mitigation, maintain service levels, and then enhance service levels. We've just done our best. Of course, with short time to turn around, there could be some exceptions to this and some overlap. Maybe one more box should be ticked, but definitely want to provide that there are drivers here that relate back to service delivery, risk assessment, and then regulatory. To the larger question that I see there in terms of could these be phased? So just starting off with the optional investments, those have been phased. We have definitely had discussions since the time that I've been here on records management, for example, and we continue to try to make do, if you will, internally. But we do have a larger initiative and program that we need to confront. But we have continued to consider that phased into future work plans. As mentioned, it's here for council's decision to advance that work into an earlier year, but it's an example of a phased FTE. Maybe I'll stop there, just because I know we're in essence of time. Maybe invite Ms. Hunt if she wants to add in.
Okay. Councillor Braithwaite, anything else? Anything from other members of council? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Watson.
Yeah, thank you. I want to go back up to just a higher level again about thinking about how we make, how adjustments are presented across the organization. And just to ask about, I know it's late in the date and it's the way the cycle works, but with respect to the police budget, which is driving a large percentage of what you're working against and bringing us options forward, if there has been any opportunity to look in that preliminarily approved budget for the kinds of things that you brought back tonight for other areas of the organization.
Sure, go ahead, Ms. the Chance. There's a couple of things on here, obviously, using some one-time funding and pieces, but perhaps you can answer the question and give it to the chief if you wish.
Yeah. Thank you very much, through your worship. Absolutely, when we receive direction from council to review and come back with opportunities for reductions, we do that organization-wide. We, of course, are subject to oversight and direction of that budget through the police board. Different lens is taken and different timing on that review. For that, there are subject to legislative timing. And then I feel like I'm missing a part of the second question. I'm sorry, if you don't mind.
Councillor Watson?
Well, whether they were given an opportunity to present at this point in the process the kinds of things that have been offered up or considered by all the other department heads. I guess that's my question.
Ms. Hunt?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Watson. No, we did not include the police in going back and looking at their budget in terms of, were there areas that we could reduce.
So just to follow up, given the constraints and that the police board would have to look at that, would it be possible to do an exercise like this very quickly to actually see if there are things? We've gone down a list of, we're all the way through H and I, and we haven't come to any conclusions about what we're going to do. And there may be one or two more things that could be on the table to help us make trade-offs in what's being offered, whether it's service reductions or changes in how programs are delivered, or that are small but are also a contribution to the situation that we're in as we try to bring this down to either 8% or 10%. So I guess that's an open question for me.
Fair. I might hand that over to Chief Channon. I'll change hats very briefly. As the mayor also said, as the police board chair, as the chair, I don't vote unless there's a tie, and there wasn't a tie in the case of the board. I will say that there was an enormous amount of work that went on at the police board, and the primary drivers of the cost increases is with the cessation of the Saanich agreement. That really drove the necessity to meet police standards, to go through the transitional change. None of that is optional. I would say that is by regulatory requirement, 100% required to meet the police standards aspect of it. The only other option would be to go and try and find some external partner or something to meet those, and those were decidedly not cheaper. They'd be more expensive and if available at all. So I think there's this issue here is that at the police board level, there was sort of nothing else done other than the mandatory changes to the structure, which drove the lion's share of those changes. And I appreciate that there's been a couple of grants and some option here to use some of the layover funding that available to the municipality to reduce the one-time costs. But anything else you wish to add, Chief Channon?
Through you, Your Worship, and Councillor Watson, thank you for raising that question and being alive to the fact how that process goes with the preliminary approval of the police budget and the legislation that falls around that. I will say and add that, to previous Mayor Costin's points about looking for things for cash flowing and creating revenue and things like that. Unfortunately, police, we aren't in the business of making money. However, proactively and independently of the police board, we've moved forward and seeking more grant funding that hasn't been done so in the past, looking through civil forfeiture and trying to fund our police vehicles, particularly administrative vehicles, through that stream. Also looking at new technologies, noting that technology is very expensive in the replacement of that, but very necessary in our profession, that we're looking at way of even just doing criminal record checks that break down some barriers for our community members to be able to apply online through a third party, still going through us and potentially generating a very small revenue stream, but looking at those things already proactively, looking at, which has been mentioned for front counter service here, is there a way for us to reduce front counter access on Fridays, just looking at different ways to do that and fund the position that might stay on a Friday and do those additional criminal record checks, but also still remain open. So please know, careful consideration was given from my direct staff as well as the police board on a literal line-by-line items that we went through, and those cost drivers again are relating to service delivery, the need for keeping our officers safe and upgrading and replacing equipment. And when you look at our police budget, it to make significant cuts in that, are looking at reduction of police officers and the huge impact to service around that. So please know, I hear sort of the hamstring piece where council is left here after the fact, but perhaps in the future there may be opportunity to have a pre-meeting or a review or something more in depth, but I will leave that to the direction of the board.
Councillor Watson? Thank you. Anything else on the positions that are here or other related? I didn't find that question out of order. I think it's entirely related to the questions that we have in front of us. Okay. I'm going to go through these one by one, but before we get to that, I just want to do the next few pieces, which is the financial challenges, the phase-in of Parks, Recreation, and Culture taxation subsidy. So this is the, I think it's already been well laid out here. So we have a couple of options here, either using more of the layover funds to kind of manage those recovery rates, or less, and that's the 0.9 and 0.6% in the two scenarios. Any questions on that? Everybody familiar with that? Okay, and then we go to section K, which is the increasing revenue admission and pass revenue, and then. Absolutely, please go ahead, Councillor Watson.
On item J, I am actually really not following the plot, and if we could just ask either Mr. Sully or our Director of Finance to explain again why that would be a reduction, but if we're doing a different phase-in.
Mr. Chan, sorry about that noise.
Thank you. Through your worship, yes, absolutely. It is a funding mechanism that was put in place during COVID to use COVID restart funding. We have monitored that each year, reported to council. We're monitoring sort of the net deficit structure of that operating budget with the intention that allowing extra time compared to other rec centers, maybe in the region, to recover. It's not intended to be a recreation performance metric, but it does give us a sense of the structural deficit there in that program off of previous levels. Definitely my colleague, Mr. Solier, can talk more about the cost structure and changes through that period, being the specialist that he is. But as it pertains to this budget and what's in front of you here, is that we would be only having a minimal contribution left for 2026 from the COVID restart money. And what we're recommending here is that that's a lot to absorb in a year, and that there's an option for council to use surplus, especially considering the new growth recommendations from staff to use surplus and offset. We've provided two different alternative amounts. Loosely, it sort of equates to splitting it in half, the amount that the tax revenue would increase by, or it would be spreading that over 3 years. So we're basically prolonging the transition back to or maybe not back, but transition to taxation.
So just to paraphrase, if I think I followed the whole thing, so you are drawing down the COVID restart at the same rate that you had intended, but you're adding some additional funding in order to offset the increases. Is that
Correct.
kind of right? Thank you.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just get clarification? Because in the detailed listing of the reserves, it shows 2025, $200,000 in the COVID-19 restart and then zero going forward. And but this would appear that we would actually have a total of $750,000 remaining in that reserve fund. Can you just get clarification about the total amount remaining in the?
I'm going to take a shot at it if you wouldn't mind, just because I think there was confusion there. So the gap is actually 900,000. 200,000 is coming from the grant, and so that 700,000 is coming from tax subsidy. And so what Rihanna is suggesting is that rather than taking the full 700,000 as tax subsidy, that we take 200,000 from the COVID Restart Grant, and then half that, so 350,000 from taxes, 350,000 from unallocated surplus or another reserve, or the other option is to do it 250. So yeah, we run out of the COVID Restart Grant. There's only 200,000 left, but the gap is greater than that, 900,000.
I think I understand. Okay. Thank you for that. Okay. Are there other questions related to that? Or, okay, then moving then to so in some ways that kind of does tie to that K1, which is the increase in recreation admission and pass revenue. Just for clarification, this would be an increase in the fees, is that correct, Mr. Soulier?
Through the mayor, yes, that's correct. That would be, excuse me, a 4% increase, and we'd be looking at a fall implementation as we typically have for our annual changes.
Okay, and for clarification, that's 4% over and above the planned increase, is that correct?
It's 4% on top of what's currently in place, which was approved mid-year last year.
A mix of different increases for different services.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. And is the small amount there then really related to it's just at the end of the year, so it only covers the remaining few months?
That's correct. It would be for the fall implementation through the rest of 2026.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Go ahead, Councillor Green, Watson, Braithwaite.
Thank you. I hope this is a fair question. How would this increase compare to other recreation centers across the region? And I know that Oak Bay has a very comprehensive program, so it is not sort of it is comparing apples and oranges in a way, but I'm just wondering how other municipalities would how they handle their recreation revenue and whether we're comparable. Thank you.
Mrs. Soulier?
Through the mayor, absolutely a fair question, and I'm happy to provide some information around that. So at present, the rates that we're charging in Oak Bay, if we just look at, for example, a single admission for an adult, it's around $7.50. The highest amount in the region is $8. So we would still not be reaching that $8 with the 4% increase. We'll be looking at 30 cents, I believe, on that. We would be, with these changes, if you look across the region, we would not be the highest in any of the categories. We would be close to the highest, which tends to be West Shore or Saanich, but we wouldn't be at that top level just yet.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Councillor Watson, then Braithwaite.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to refer back to a really good piece of work that was done, contracted by Parks and Rec. November 2024, we received a report, an economic analysis that did a really good evaluation of the rates for recreation more generally, what those services were like, and in particular looked at the price elasticity of demand for recreational services. And I went back to look at it because I thought I was imagining this was going to be here tonight. And what it concluded, although with some maybe not caution, but with some qualifications, I guess, was that with respect to fees for Oak Bay, price elasticity prices are pretty inelastic, and people would probably, they said up to 10% you could probably introduce increases without affecting take up and use. So that's a big margin between 4%. What it did conclude was that people were less likely to come and use the services and would go away if it took them longer to access them. So time was elastic, fees themselves inelastic. So I just wondered if there could be consideration for, because this 4%, of course, doesn't bring in much revenue this year, but if we could consider a more ambitious increase and be prepared to take the risk, that is exactly what happens, that people like our rec services so well, we're still in line with neighboring municipalities, that we could actually get a bit more revenue out of those good services.
Soulier, I think I'll give you an opportunity to respond to that.
Through the mayor, yes, great point, and staff are very much referring to that good work that was done in 2024. One of the considerations that I might have addressed it in a recent meeting, given that we had some pretty substantial adjustments made just last year that just took effect in the last few months, staff are considering that 4% as being sort of reasonable. We looked around the region in terms of what other municipalities were doing, and 4% was the highest that anyone was adjusting their fees. 3% tended to be the sort of norm. That being said, given the situation that we're in, considering a slightly more ambitious adjustment would not seem to have a major impact on our volumes, particularly on fees and the emission structure that we have. I believe I mentioned previously that staff are planning to do a more in-depth review of opportunities later this year to bring back to council. When we received the direction to bring back options, we quickly pulled this together for the sake of this discussion, but you can anticipate a more robust discussion later in the year as well.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I just would follow up by saying it is a really good value proposition, and clearly, the public are saying to us, we want less taxes, and therefore we need revenue from somewhere. And it just looks like it's a reasonable place to go look for it. It's a high quality service, and it is not short of users.
Very good. I have Councillor Braithwaite and Patterson.
Thank you. Actually, Councillor Watson basically asked my question because I was looking at cost recovery if we did have an increase. And so basically, I think your question kind of asked that. And from what I'm hearing, it would increase our cost recovery. And it is something that we can possibly look at. So thank you.
Councillor Patterson and Smart.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I think it just continues on to that. And the figure that is here will not significantly increase revenues, certainly in 2026 and over the next 5 years. But I guess it's also a function of is it keeping pace with the increase in expenditures to offset it? I mean, somehow we have to try and relate them, because otherwise the cost recovery, even though we're increasing the fees, the amount of cost recovery can slide, and I'm just wondering if staff could speak to that.
Mr. Soulier.
Through the mayor, so when we look at the overall sort of cost escalation in the municipal environment, you would typically see an escalation factor that is higher than what you might see in the regular industry, given that our basket of goods and services is different than the average person. The fees that we're talking about today very much have a market component to them. So, and as the study concluded, a couple of years ago, there's some great information and great opportunity in there, but there's also some caution around making sure that we don't price ourselves out of and end up reducing our volumes in some areas as well. But when we're talking specifically around admissions and passes, we do see opportunity there, and the overhead that's associated with that in terms of the costs is lower. So we do. The 4% that we're proposing today is a start. It roughly translates to about $120,000 for the year. But again, as we're looking at this on an annual basis, that will adjust, as we report back into council on options and opportunities.
Thank you. Councillor Smart. Oh, Ms. LaChance, please go ahead.
And if I may, just through your worship, just to add some greater context for the financial plan that's underlying, there have already, as Mr. Soulier mentioned, some increases already provided for in the base budget. So while I think I'm picking up on that, council seeing a relatively small number and encouraging some greater analysis there, I'd want to assure you that within the base budget, and in fact in this sheet, unfortunately, we can pull it up and open it, but in Appendix 15, you'll actually see the actual increase for recreation revenue there.
Councillor Smart?
Thank you. Through Mayor to Mr. Celia, I just wondered if the increases are 4% on average, or if they're going to be sort of following the same rate increase consideration that council gave last time as far as subsidized passes for youth. Like if there's a bit of fluctuation in there, it's an average, or is it going to be just 4% across the board?
Mrs. Soulier?
Through the mayor, the modeling that we pulled together quickly for this discussion is 4% across the board. So for youth, for example, I think it was about a 20 cent increase on their fee. But yes, it would be across all of those categories for fees and passes.
Thank you. So I'm just going to ask a clarifying question because I'm not entirely clear on what the 4% is. Is that there's a planned incremental increase that's sort of in there, and then basically whatever the staff determine is a reasonable amount, we're going to add 4% onto that? Or are we just sort of committing to a 4% increase in the fall as a minimum for those changes? So just perhaps for my clarification.
Through you would be the latter. So it's 4% on top of the current fee that council approved last year.
Right.
That would take effect in September.
Okay. And then can I ask, this is sort of a bit of a philosophical question, so forgive me for this, but we are looking at a pretty substantial tax increase, somewhere between 8 and 12%. I'm just trying to understand the rationale. I think to Councillor Patterson's point, we subsidize the Parks and Recreation, taxpayers subsidize it considerably. Is there a rationale there for keeping the increase lower than the taxation? Because it would seem to me by having the fees for the people who use the service lower than the tax increase that subsidizes it, we're essentially shifting yet more of the cost onto the general taxpayer as opposed to the user. So I'm thinking more that we should probably try and tie our fee increase somewhat to the taxation level so that they're more on par. But I'm just perhaps to you, Mr. Soulier.
I'm not sure I have much more to add to that. That is certainly an option for council to consider. We haven't looked at the options in that way. We've been sort of focused on, as I mentioned earlier, sort of the changes that have been made recently to the fees for patrons. But and I think another variable that I believe I've shared previously with council, the patrons that are essentially paying these fees are largely made up of individuals coming into the district from other jurisdictions. So 65% roughly of our pass holders and patrons that are in our system. So
yeah, thank you for that. Okay, and then so let's bring it back to then. We have the other is just the adding one-time funding for the police survey. This is again a requirement under the Police Act to do a survey. It's slightly more robust than has been done, but it's sort of more in alignment with what Police Services is asking. But the suggestion here is that we find some one-time funding for that to reduce the overall taxation burden. Is there any questions on that? Okay. I will say, just from a police board perspective, there's an intention of building in an incremental amount each year so that it's not a one-time fund every 3 years. It's actually just a smaller amount that's gathered up over the time. Okay, and then on the, are there any questions on the section L on new optional investments in some of those positions? Okay. All right, I think we're getting out to the hard part of this job now, but before I do that, let me go to Ms. LaChance.
Well, thank you very much, Your Worship. Just a small touchback to, after hearing the discussion, to the first item for crossing guard. Heard from the discussion about a notice period. We will await your direction on that, but thought it might be valuable for the conversation that if that's the intention, perhaps we can consider that a 1-year funding within the base budget, and then look to fund that from one-time funding instead of ongoing. So it's just a fairly minor adjustment, but could result in a tax reduction.
Thank you for that. that's a good suggestion if that is the intention of council. So I didn't seek direction as we went through, but I'm going to go through on the motions that are in the, maybe we can bring up on the screen, the council decision points. So that would be page 15, or 16, sorry, of the presentation. The first one of that is the capital plan. So that is the general capital plan and the desire, that was actually on an earlier slide, but basically seeking direction from council that the capital plan as presented be approved. Again, these are recommendations to council, obviously, to guide the financial planning process. Before I take a second, or Ms. LaChance, do you wish anything specific in that language other than essentially to move forward the capital plan as laid out in the presentation?
No, that's fine, Your Worship.
Okay. So what was moved, is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. This is a chance to give direction at this one. Specific to the capital plan, go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think I understand this to be the capital plan, and also the borrowing component as well is also under this motion. So I will speak to this, and I will support what is proposed here, although I will make a point. I will take the opportunity to register my significant concern about the level and scope and tax implications of long-term borrowing. The scale of borrowing is going from, well, none at the moment to a significant amount, and an amount that this community has not encountered in many, many years. And I will make the point, I can support this in its current format, but I will make the point in order that future councils, and just as a warning, I guess, to future councils, when we are projecting the tax increase associated with the costs of borrowing in subsequent years, as council has seen, the costs of borrowing alone are 4, 5, even 6% in certain years, depending on what year it is. So right now, we are wrangling with a base budget. Essentially, we're talking about 8% non-discretionary costs in this budget alone. So in subsequent years, to be able to wrangle with a double-digit tax increase, with a built-in 5-6% borrowing cost, just as a baseline, is going to be extremely challenging. So it will require significant attention to levels of service, diversification of the tax base, all of those things which will help us address the revenue side of this equation. So I don't doubt for a second that any of the components that are under the currently presented borrowing plan are significant and important. And we effectively have no other way to get this work done other than to borrow. However, the implications for taxpayers in the district 5, 6, or 7 years out are pretty significant. So that will be sort of a placeholder and a warning to future councils, and a warning to the community that taking on this type of borrowing to replace these facilities, which are critical, is going to require that we look at all aspects of district operations. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and yeah, I agree totally with Councillor Appleton, and I do notice that when we looked at the presentation, it said the debt program report coming soon. Well, I think that we more work has to be done, and I think we all do understand that. I'm okay with the capital projects because they're a starting point, but I do think we will have to scrutinize them more for core services. We know certainly from the survey the support was definitely for water, sewer, storm drains, playgrounds, parks, roads. So, you know, the community has told us what they believe is important, and I think that needs to be the focus. Then we have to look at the other, perhaps more discretionary items, and try and come to terms with, pardon me, what will become really an unsustainable debt servicing for the community. So I see this as a starting point. Not, you know, it will change year to year, and I would advise future councils to be very cautious in doing this without having the full debt report and coming to it and understanding what the, you know, what are the implications 7 and 8 years down the road, not tomorrow. So I add to that, yes.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the comments of my colleagues. I also want to remind us that some of this is a culmination of years of low taxes, artificially low taxes in Oak Bay. We got here because there was a suppression of taxes that did not recognize that the devolution from the province of services and programs is a huge factor also in the cost of local government, and all local governments are facing the same issues that we're facing. So we're not alone in this battle. It's very difficult, and that's not to say that this is sustainable. It is not sustainable over time, but every single small community like Oak Bay is facing this same problem, and it will be a challenge from here on in to cover all of these expenses. But I am reminded that so much devolution has occurred over the last 15 to 20 years by the province. And we've talked about it at this table tonight about some of the programs we have, that they should be provincially funded and they are not. And they won't be anytime soon either, given the budget issue for the province. But I just want to say that I think this council has really tried the last 3.5 years to do the best they can under very difficult circumstances, and I think staff are trying to wrangle this as well, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. So the motion on the floor right now is for approval. I appreciate the comments that are made here. Looking at the capital plan, it's hard to argue with any of it. That being said, I think probably the one that does flag for me is the Windsor Park building. It's a substantial portion of that, and I think we were kind of somewhat counting on grants for that building to go ahead, and so I think that'll be Carnarvon Park, not Windsor, the Carnarvon Park building, and so I think the water park and things are at a low enough cost. Those are probably all supportable no matter what, but the building may come back as a question mark depending on where those grants end up. But let's just hope that we do get the grants that we have things in for, and we can advance that project fulsomely. Okay, so motion on the floor is for that capital piece. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. And again, this is giving direction for it to come back within the financial plan. If we can skip over to the next one, which is my recollection is the council consideration of the 2026-2030 base operating plan. So this basically gives us this is sort of the base 11.2%. Then we'll go through the other pieces as consideration of individual items to reduce that amount or add to it. So can I just get that? Oh, I guess, yeah, I'll have a motion just to advance that piece, the new council new growth. Sorry, of base operating plan 11.2%. Is there a mover and seconder for that? Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion on that? And this is not. This is to start. This is basically for us to start with, and then we'll obviously have to go through the individual pieces. So, is there anything in that initial 11.2% that people want to flag at this point, outside of the ones that we're going to go through? Okay, and I'll leave an opportunity at the end as well. If there's anything else to add or come back to, we can do that. So I'm going to call the question on that. Then all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. And then we move to consideration of new growth revenue. The proposal here is that we have $230,000 of the anticipated $350,000 be allocated to tax reduction, essentially the increase reduction. Moved and seconded. Any other discussion on that? Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Worship. I'm definitely in support of this and happy to see it happening. It represents a bit of a philosophical shift for the district, which I think is really important to recognize. Essentially, this is recognizing that in previous years, as council is aware, this has been the new taxation revenue has been such a comparatively minor component of the budget that it could be added to reserves without really noticing into the budget. It is important to recognize that this is specifically to do with new development revenue. This is new taxation. So when we talk about the restrictions that the new OCP puts on development, this is directly affecting this type of revenue that can be collected. And this is covering the 1% that we need to put into the ACC, DCC contributions that a new development would have to pay in any case. It's very important to underline that this is new development taxation, and that new development in the district will help offset costs for existing residents.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. Any other discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. We move then to Budget mitigation options, so this is sections H through K. I'm going to use the 15A thing as we go through it one by one. So I'm going to have these as motions, where there's a negative, these are pretty much all cost reductions. I think I'll do is see if there's a mover and seconder, and we can have a quick debate on each one. And we'll go through a cumulative. I do want to remind everybody, I do want to just have a quick debate on each one. So I'm going to ask that we move them. I guess there's no mover and seconder that answers the question. And as we go through, staff will do a running, essentially, they'll keep track of where we're at, and that'll give us a total at the end, and we can make some adjustments at the end of that at the end. Okay. Councillor Braithwaite, you had a question?
Mayor, just so are you suggesting that we do it like a block H, block I, block J, or can we go?
No, H1, H2,
H1,
H3.
okay, thank you so much.
Yep. Councillor Appleton?
Oh, okay, that's a procedural question for you as well, Your Worship. So is that your direction for how these should be handled, or is a motion out of order if it considers items as a block?
I think it's probably good for us just to move them one at a time, otherwise we're going to end up having people asking to sever and so forth in any case. So I'll go through them quickly. I think we can get through this in a reasonably timely fashion. We've had a fair bit of discussion on each one already. So procedurally, I'm going to ask that we do H1, H2, H3, H4, and consider it that way. Although any party who wishes to make a motion differently is welcome to do so. That is always, it's not my call is to make motions, but then my suggestion is that we just move them, and I'm happy just to take a standard mover and seconder, and we can kind of bang through them quickly. Okay, so move H1. So this is Animal Crossing Guard to remove. I think the suggestion, so if that was to go forward, I believe the discussion I heard around the table would be that would come out of taxation. We would provide notice, but we would find one-time funding to cover that. Is that correct, Ms. LaChance?
That's correct, yes.
So moved and seconded. Any other discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you. Can we have the same mover and seconder for H2?
I'll move H2.
So
That's
this is to remove it? Yep. This has no taxation impact, but it does have an impact on the longer-term piece. So moved and seconded. So we're now debating approval of this removes the deer management program.
Sorry, it says do not, sorry, no.
It's okay. I think it's important for us just to have it on the floor. But if there's no seconder, I guess if you're not going to second it, seconded, yeah. So the motion on the floor is to remove the deer management program this year. So any other discussion on that? We had a debate. We had a fair bit of robust discussion on it. But any other points that people feel haven't been raised? Okay, so just as a reminder, vote in the affirmative, vote in favor is to remove, vote in the opposite is to keep it. So if you wish to remove it, in favor, keep it, opposed. I know it's a bit confusing, which is why I don't like these things, but I think it's important that we go through these in the way that they're laid out in the report. Councillor Smart, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to voice that I'm very much in favor of this program, but I'm going to vote to remove it this year and I don't think that's the way the motion will pass, but I'm in favor of really trying to have this provincially funded, and I think that it's really jeopardizing our ability to do that by funding it ourselves this year.
Okay. So the motion right now is to remove. All those in favor? And those opposed? Patterson, myself, Watson, and Green opposed. That is not removed. Then we have, again, we have a mover for H3.
I'll move H3.
Okay, so it's live on the floor. It's okay. I think for discussion, let's put it on there. This is for medical first responder, asking to remove that portion of it. Estimated cost savings of $60,000, but obviously an impact on service levels here that we'd have to consider. So I'm not anticipating this to pass, given the conversation, but I just want to make sure that we have the chance to discuss it. Any other discussion? Or yeah, go ahead, Councillor Watson.
Well, I will vote to remove it. I don't want to, but I think that no matter how much our residents appreciate it, we have to find some ways to reduce this tax increase. That's why we came to the table and asked staff to do this. So I will actually vote to remove it.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Patterson?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I did second it for discussion, but I would like to retain it. I think it is an important service to the community, so I'd like to see it stay in at least for the first round of cuts.
Thank you. Councillor Green?
I will vote to retain, and it's because of the human impact. People are at their most fragile and most vulnerable when they're ill or something happens, so I will not support to remove it. Thank you.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to remove, so a vote in favor is to remove it, a vote in opposition is to keep it. So all those in favor? And those opposed? I have Councillor Patterson, Smart, Braithwaite, myself, Appleton, and Green opposed. That remains in the budget. And then we have H4, which is the recommendation or the option to reducing active transportation funding, reducing the funding increase by 50%, adding just 127,000 instead of the 256,000 or it was.
I'll make that motion.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Discussion? Councillor Appleton?
Thank you, Worship. It does mean no, I'm obviously a significant proponent of active transportation. It does mean no good, happiness to be able to vote for this. I will actually support this reduction because of the justification that staff have provided. I just want to be really clear that, I support this as a one-time reduction in the context that staff have provided and not as an ongoing solution to a problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite and Smart.
Thanks. I would agree. I mean, I obviously support improving active transportation and road safety. It's about the timing about this and the overall tax increase this year. And so I think that it's even if we moderate the increase this year, the basic active transportation program and the previous investments really are going to remain in place. So this is just really about pacing future expansion. So I'll be voting in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smart.
Yeah, thank you. It also pains me slightly to support this year because I do care quite a bit about our active transportation progress. But with this affordability context that we're in this year, I think this is a strategic move where we've heard from staff that it won't delay any projects. And I just think we need to be careful, though, moving forward in future years to not particularly delay the proactive planning work so that we are ready to go on these projects when the opportunities do present themselves, especially for grants.
Thank you. Seeing nobody opposed, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That will have the reduction attached. Okay, we now move to section I. So these are core service levels. So we have front counter hours. Again, I'm just going to ask you to just throw this on the floor. Moved and seconded. Thank you. Discussion. Councillor Watson.
I think from the explanation I heard, this is a very minor adjustment, so we might as well do it. The public aren't going to notice it, and so why not actually make the reduction? There can be all sorts of adjustments that still make us providing superlative service when people come in the door to Municipal Hall, but these minor adjustments are a contribution to getting to where we need to go. So I support that.
Councillor Braithwaite.
I'll be voting against this because I do really feel that we do need to have a front-facing presence, and that is the first contact for a lot of the members of our community, and so I would like to see this stay in the budget. Thank you.
Councillor Smart, then Green.
Yeah, thank you. I do appreciate staff finding all these small moments, but I also won't be supporting this because I really do immediately just think potentially of someone in our community, perhaps spending a long time on a bus trying to get here and showing up and not being able to have that service. And I think it's really important that we maintain that communication and availability.
Councillor Green.
Yes, I won't be supporting this either. I really feel strongly that, again, first impressions are important, and there are people now with accessibility issues. It's even more important that they feel welcome and able to access services at the front desk. But I do appreciate the staff's rationale, and I understand it fully, and I think if we can find more efficiencies for next year, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see other conversation on the hands on this one, so just a reminder, a vote in favor removes the front counter hours portion, the $15,000. A vote against keeps it. So if I could, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? And those opposed? I have Councillor Patterson, Smart, Braithwaite, in Green opposed, and Appleton opposed. Okay, that does not pass. Then we have reduced graffiti cleanup and beautification. We have a mover and seconder for that. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Your worship, I just wonder, are we talking about moving at 110,000, or are we talking about moving at 63,000?
Oh, fair enough. Let's have a bit clarification from the mover.
I'll do the move 110,000.
Is that the seconder amenable? Okay, and I'll open it for discussion. If people feel stronger about the 63 or nothing, then please let's vocalize that. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you. And I'm basing that on what I heard staff say, and how that that item can be moved around within staff, and that's the only reason that I'm doing it at the higher level. Thank you.
Councillor Appleton?
Yeah, I can support actually either of these levels, Your Worship, so I appreciate that motion coming forward. I think more is better, but I think we heard a pretty strong rationale from staff that this can be managed, so that's a fairly significant cost driver.
Thank you. Not seeing any of your hands, I'm going to call the question again. Vote in favor removes it at 110,000. Vote opposed keeps it. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. We then have reduced facilities maintenance. This is the moved and seconded. I just need a hand from somebody to second it. Thanks. And again, we don't record mover and seconder for the simple reason that we just want to put things on the floor for discussion. And once it's live on the floor for the benefit of the public, it's owned by everybody on this table, and we debate it as a whole. So it's perfectly valid to move it and then vote against it. Here we go. Councillor Braithwaite.
Yeah, and basically I'm voting in favor of this based again on what I heard from staff. Thank you.
Other discussion? So again, the vote in favor is a vote to remove that funding. All clear? So all those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none opposed, that carries. We move to, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Worship. So just in keeping, as items I4 through I11 are all staffing-related items, and I have a certain approach to staffing that I'd kind of like to explore with council, I would like to propose that under section I, that items I4.
I'm going to interrupt you just for a second, and that is just to get a motion to extend our meeting. Forgot we started at 6. If I can have it extended by an hour, I think it should be done much sooner than that. But
so moved, Your Worship.
The mover and seconder. Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Please continue, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would, under section I would make the motion that items I4, I7, I8, and I9 be removed. Under section I, items I4, I7, I8, and I9 be removed.
Second that.
That's moved and seconded, so we can discuss it. And again, committee of the whole, fairly flexible here. People want to make a case for yes or no on any of those, but also any of the other positions. I think it's open for discussion. Please go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship. Clearly, these are tough decisions with respect to staffing, and I think that each one of these, you can make a strong case for each, as is outlined in Appendix 4. My approach here is, my rationale is that the FTEs are our largest individual cost driver. And so unless we address the FTEs, there's no question, as this council has dealt with many times before, there's justification for every FTE. Staff are reasoned in how they bring things forward. It is to us to determine what is the best balance of these things. I4, I7, I8, and I9, council will notice, are positions which exist without any other funding to help defray their costs. So this is my main decision-making point here. So council will note, and as has been described by staff, there are other contributions that come to bear on traffic services, the facilities and asset management coordinator, which I think is very significant. We've talked a lot about information technology and some of the risks to the municipality that accrue from IT. Some of the other positions, while I think are important, are ones that do not have those offsetting costs. So that is my main motivation for that. I would not seek to eliminate the entire staff complement suggested here. I think that there are some very significant roles here, but the combination of the importance of the tasking and the contribution of other funds towards the implementation of those positions is my rationale for this suggestion, Your Worship.
Sure, thank you for that. I'm also cognizant of the fact that we can give some direction here. I probably would, thank you for the motivation. I think, and the list is very similar to mine. I'm also just cognizant of the fact that there may be some internal discussions that happen in terms of internal prioritizations and understanding the operational pieces. So I'm going to suggest that if this passes, that we also give freedom to the staff to come back and like that essentially sets a budget level, but if there's some tweaking of some of like, okay, we actually do need to prioritize a few other things internally, that be allowed to happen. Because this is not tiered, it's essentially here's all the departments have given their options, and I think we should make sure that the staff have an opportunity to kind of consider that total. And if I add those up, the total amount, understanding that the one-time funding is available for the business analyst piece because it's a term, the total impact on budget on taxation here is net positive 200,000, removing 426,000 from the preliminary budget. So that'd be just my suggestion, but we can. So if anybody wants to talk about that as well, but that would be probably. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much, and I agree with you. I just wanted to know if we should build that into the motion, that staff has the flexibility internally to rearrange and, no?
I think we're okay. We can just give
Okay.
that general direction if that's the will of council, so.
If it helps your worship as mover, that's clear and understood and supported by me.
Yeah, the only reason, maybe I can do it as motion arising if we want clarity. My concern is we have a motion financially of selecting, and they're in the negative, which makes it awkward. So we're, go ahead, Councilor Braithwaite.
Thanks, Mayor. And just to be clear, so then if this motion moves ahead, then we'll be looking individually at I-5, I-6, I-10, and I-11. Is that correct?
I'm allowing conversation in all of this, but yes, we can either deal with them as a group or as individual at that point. Councilor Watson?
I guess I do have a little question, no, maybe not a little one, a significant question about the manager of recreation and cultural services, which is proposed for a major revenue center for the organization, and the extent to which that position is really needed to drive change in the organization, to find efficiencies, to do things like program reviews and what have you, and also continue to provide the good service that's driving attendance at our facilities. So I am curious about that and whether we actually add risk by not providing the opportunity for that oversight management program review and all those things that happen in well-functioning organizations.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's a good question. I hate to put a single director on the spot in this situation, but Mrs. Julie, you might want to just touch base on that. I'm primarily concerned about dollars here today rather than getting into all the weeds of that, but I think it's worthwhile since the question was asked to give you a chance to explain the nature of that position.
Sure, through the mayor. So just, excuse me, briefly, staff have been looking at this sort of challenge that's been brewing for years now as the volumes have increased and the number of staff and contractors and patrons. We're now north of 1 million patrons to the facilities, including all 5 recreation facilities. And in the added complexity and operational risk that we're undertaking, we have 2 individuals right now that are operational managers, and revenue is now exceeding $10 million. It's a substantial operation, and there was a fairly strong sort of desire within the staff team to look at this as something that perhaps is a little bit delayed in getting to in terms of making sure that we have the leadership support to manage this growing business, but operational risk was certainly one of the considerations.
Did that answer, Mrs. Soulier? Other questions at this point?
Just a comment, I actually don't support that as part of the package. I'd like to see I-9 come out, so I don't know if I can move a motion to amend the motion to actually make it at least now for discussion, I-4, I-7, and I-8.
You may make that motion, so it's just to remove I-9 from the list of subjects to come out of that list, which effectively adds 129,500 to the budget, which is, I think, again, the primary piece that we're talking about. Is there a seconder for that? Okay. Again, I think importantly, if that is internal discussions happen, and that's the most important, I think we need to give the flexibility of staff to come back and share that. So with that, the motion on the floor is live, and I'm happy to call the question if I don't see any other hands. Again, a motion in favor essentially adds, sorry, removes those other positions. So that would be I4, I7, I8, and I9. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Sorry, could you so you're saying a motion in favor is to reduce the ones that we have listed? Okay.
Yes, yeah, to reduce by I4, I7, I8, I9.
You're saying by that amount?
By that, we'll essentially take it as those positions. That's sort of our guidance. I think I'm going to seek a motion arising basically to say, send this budget back and to staff to give after this to give some direction. If they can flex, they can change those actual positions coming back. Okay, all those in favor? And opposed? Not opposed. I'm going to just seek that motion arising that basically permits staff to review the total amount within the budget and allocate resources as they see appropriate.
So moved, Your Worship.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed. So that that is that whole section. I think we're done that piece now. Anything else so that's just, so everybody understands, watching at home, that's about, it's keeping about $200,000 in that, but removing about $426,000.
Sorry, Mayor.
Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Sorry, I thought we were now going to discuss I5, I6, I10,
Oh, sure.
and I11.
We can do that if you wish.
Yeah, thank you.
I think, yeah, go ahead.
If I may, just the question, the net other funding, where is that coming from, just for the clarification of people who might be listening online?
Sure. So under Appendix 4, it lists both the tax impact and the other sources of revenue. In some cases, that's one-time funding. In some cases, it's just other revenue sources, like through a capital plan and so forth. So. Okay. So I'm happy, if people wish, I can take them one at a time. We can move them. But if we wish to.
I would move I5.
So this is to remove I5? That's correct?
Sorry, I was going to leave I5 in, actually.
So right now, left in is I5, I6, I10, and I11.
Sorry, I would remove I6.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is to remove I6 from this funding. Is there a seconder? Don't see that. Anybody seconding that? Any other motions to remove those remaining? Not seeing any. I think that concludes the piece. Actually, procedurally here, motion-wise, we voted to remove those pieces. So everything else is net in, is that correct? If we have no other motions, okay. So I'll deem that, I mean, again, at the end, we'll have a chance to do a final reflection once we get the numbers. We can move this then to J, and this is a question, do we phase in? And if we do so, how do we manage that? Obviously, the more aggressive takes out, over the next couple of years, a more significant amount. Option scenario B reduces that by less, and then obviously there is a scenario C here where we don't use this to offset the subsidy deficit. Councillor Appleton?
Your Worship, I would make the motion to phase in the taxation subsidy at the $350,000 level.
Okay, I'll seek a seconder and we can talk to both options. Go ahead. I think it's moved and seconded. You wish to speak to it, Councillor Appleton?
I'll just be brief, Your Worship. I think this was contextualized very well by staff, and I think it's just really a philosophical decision. I do believe that there needs to be this type of subsidy included. I think we're in a transitional period with the Parks, Rec, and Culture Department. We're talking about fee changes, and we're also talking about a situation where we're transitioning past the COVID grants. So I consider this to be very much a time of transition for PRC and hoping to bump up those recovery rates. So I'm happy to do this. I would suggest that it wouldn't be an extended period of time, but I would like to do this at least this one time.
Moved, seconded. Any other discussion on that? I'm going to just speak against, only because I believe that the $250,000 is the more appropriate amount. I think it's a more realistic time frame to get it over 3 years than the 2 years. But I obviously that's just down to just nuance. So, but just to explain it, I'm not opposed to doing this. My personal preference is for the 3 years. So we're dealing with by motion, that's the way to do it. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping that scenario B would have been put on the table. So that's really where my preference would be as well.
All right, well, you know what, we'll call the question, and if that's if that fails, then we can go to scenario B. If that fails, then we're find something else or nothing. So all those in favor, again, in favor is to select the $350,000 scenario A. All those in favor? And opposed? Councillor Patterson, Braithwaite, myself, and Green opposed, so we're...
I'll put on a motion on the floor to do scenario B for the 250,000.
Moved and seconded. Don't think we need to debate this. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed, that carries, okay. I'm just gonna, tracking myself here on this list. Going to section K for revenue generation. We have the increased recreation admission and pass revenue. I'm gonna just ask that we move the motion as it's laid here.
Move section K.
It's to K1.
Okay, K1.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. I'm going to suggest that actually should, I think 4%, given all of the other costs that we're considering here, is probably low. I thought if it was an additional sort of 4% over the planned increases, that would be more supportable, but I do think that there's an argument here to be asking for a slightly more, given the price inelasticity of pieces and the time pieces and the heavy use of the facilities. Plus, philosophically, I think I laid out my point that I have a hard time reducing the increase by significantly less by half of what the tax increases are going to, especially when 65% of the people benefiting from that subsidy are coming from outside of the community. But I'll go to Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks, Mayor. I wouldn't disagree, but I think it's hard to not have I mean, if we said 8%, for example, I'm just throwing a number out there, we don't know whether that means it's going to be $80,000 or $100,000. So it's hard to know what's that increase, what the difference would be if we did change that percentage.
Yeah, I think importantly, the percentage here is more sort of future years because it doesn't come in until the fall. So there's only a minor increase this year, but it's sort of a cumulative impact over multiple years going forward. So this is less about taxation reduction this year than it is about that. And I should point out, at the end of the day, these numbers do come back. Even if we gave a notice here, they would come back as a it would essentially be a guideline for staff to work with to come back with the recommendations. Is that fair, Mr. Soulier?
Through the mayor, yes, there's a bylaw amendment required to the fees and charges bylaw.
Yeah, so this would be a guideline piece. So right now, the suggestion is sort of the 4% expected standard, but I'm not going to ask that. I think if there's interest here in having a higher number, I think it's probably worth I think probably we might want to test it up and then test it down. So if it tests out, maybe a motion to increase that to say 6 or 8%, or to, and then if that fails, we can deal with the main motion, and if that fails, then of course we can take some other addition, i.e. no direction given at this point. But I don't see hands. Go ahead, Councillor Watson.
I'd like to suggest that the motion would be to increase the admission and pass revenue by 6%, sort of cutting things off sort of halfway, and see how that goes. We won't know unless we try.
You make a good King Solomon there for splitting it in half. Moved and seconded. So the motion is to amend the motion from 4% to 6% as a base, as a guideline. So I think just for absolutely all clear here, Mr. LaChance and Mr. Soulier, if this passes, whether it's 4% or 6%, it is essentially a guide, our direction essentially to use that as the baseline increase, subject to recommendations from staff coming back in the fall. Is that by bylaw? Is that? Just want to make sure we're all clear about what we're actually sort of giving direction for here. Mr. Soulier?
Yes, through the mayor, we would be coming back earlier than the fall. It would be so that we could implement for the fall. So
okay, yeah, very good. Okay, so the motion. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I would like to say, though, that we are building the financial plan with that assumption. So,
Yes.
It's not a very large amount, but if it was larger amount, I would be concerned that you're not passing the same bylaw at the same time because we're building a financial plan based on the assumption that those. So, but it's not significant that I'm so worried about it.
Fair, yes, fair. The $20,000 difference is not making a significant difference in the big scheme of things for this year. Anyway, I think we understand I just want to make sure we're all clear about what the ask is. So the motion is to amend from 4% to 6% as the baseline. I'm going to call a question on that amendment. All those in favor? And opposed? Not opposed, so that carries. So that's the amendment to change it from 4 to 6. So then I'm going to call the question on that amended amount, which is 6%. So any other discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? I appreciate that one might be a hard one to incorporate into the taxation impact, so do your best on that. And then, because this is really more about, I think, philosophy than it is about dollars for this year. And then we have the add one-time funding to cover the police survey. So mover and seconder for that. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? That concludes the K. Is there any motions coming forward to add the new optional investments, which is the planning management, sidewalk program, parks planning, records coordinator, deferred fire staffing capacity? All great things. Okay. So we have gone through this list. I think I'm going to go just back to that piece here. We've done HK and L and M. So we're at 8.4%. Is that what I saw on the flash up on the screen there briefly? Certainly bringing us closer in alignment with our neighboring municipalities who are being sort of between 7 and 10%, or 6 and 10%. Any other direction given here at this point? Yeah, Councillor Patterson, and maybe before I go to you, Councillor Patterson, I have a sneaking suspicion. I just want to make sure: have we forgotten anything on this one? Is there anything procedurally you need direction for before we go back and sort of do a last chance to go through with council? Anything, any potential changes?
Sorry, just conferring to make sure we didn't miss anything
No,
between
100%.
us. Back to you, Your Worship. No, we're just looking for making sure we move through all of those sections. And once we've moved to L and confirmed that there's nothing there that needs to be advanced, we've completed the operating plan section of the consideration.
My apologies for a little nagging cough here in the background. I did ask the question if there's any motions coming out of L. So I'm going to just, my opinion, we've gone through the entirety. I'm going to give a last chance for members to council either to raise things they would like to see perhaps change, or just to make a final comment before I get direction to move this in its entirety forward. Yes. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson. You indicated you wish to speak.
Yes, Mayor, I would like to put forward for council's consideration to put the new optional investments, L2, the sidewalk program, in. That adds about 0.2 to what were we at, 8.4. And I think sidewalks were a source of complaint. I know it is covered also under the traffic. It's in the traffic.
I need a seconder before we do
second,
that.
yeah.
Okay. Move discussion. Okay. So, and again, I think these are in Appendix 4, again, at the end of that, if people are looking to see the details. Please go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I put it forward for consideration simply because certainly that was identified on the survey, and it's been in staff's notes too, that the sidewalk, the complaints about it, of the condition of the sidewalks have increased, and some of the work has fallen behind. And if we could put something forward to moving that forward a little more rapidly in the program, I would certainly be willing to increase it to do that if there is support at the council table.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Smart.
Yeah, I'll speak in support. I've heard continuously the last few years, some really dire, very emotional emails from our residents about how this impacts their daily life.
Councillor Braithwaite and then Appleton.
Thanks. I'll speak in support as well. I was actually witnessed a fall on one of our sidewalks just a week ago, and when I look around at the state of our sidewalks, I know that we have a lot of work to do for the safety of our residents. So I'll be in support of this. Thank you.
Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Worship. So very unhappily speaking against the motion that's on the floor, because I believe very strongly in the impact of the position. Councillor Patterson is exactly correct. This has been identified as a high priority for the community, and so I understand the rationale very clearly. It's as simple for me as not being able to support even a well-reasoned and important optional investment if we're not able to support all of our core investments in staff. So that's one of my rationales there. And also, staffing, again, is a major cost driver for the district, and I think this is a very good example of something that in constrained financial situations and with very significant limitations on revenue in the district, these are the kinds of things that unfortunately the community needs to face up to is not going to be able to be done. These are the things that fall off as we focus increasingly on very, very core deliverables. So I very much believe in the significance of the position. But these are the kinds of things that are on the edges of the operation, are far enough away from non-core, and I don't say that it's not important, but far away from these are the kinds of things that are going to end up dropping off the to-do list and are not going to be able to be funded. So it brings me no joy to say it, but I can't support this at this time.
Councillor Watson?
Yes, and I'll be joining Councillor Appleton in that vote against, much as everybody would like to see these changes and these fixes happen when they're asked for, but I think that we do have to face the music. We can't pay for everything, and so therefore we can't pay for new things. But I'd also comment that in the core program, sidewalks do get fixed. They get rebuilt. The community does see changes. The active transportation program brings some of those about. So it's not like we're abandoning our maintenance and capital investment in sidewalks. We're just not giving it this extra bit of attention. That would be lovely, but I don't think we can afford.
Any other discussion? I point out it's on the cheat sheet we have in front of us here, it's listed as $90,000. In the appendix 4, it does lay out, it is a $90,000 cost. 30,000 of that comes out of capital funding, as I understand it. So net 60,000 to taxation.
That's correct,
Okay.
yes.
Just wanted to make sure that we're all clear about what's being asked for tonight. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
Thank you. Just a question through you, Mayor, to Ms. Lachance. Is there a way to calculate how this will affect the tax rate that you just calculated?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you. I just wondered if we could see that before we take the vote. Is that possible?
Yeah, it'll bring it up to about 8.5 or 8.55, I would think. 8.5. There we go. Thank you. Councillor Patterson for a second time.
Yes, thank you. And I hear what Councillor Watson and Councillor Appleton are saying. However, our sidewalk repairs program has fallen behind. We have done significantly less work on sidewalks than we have done certainly on active transportation in many cases. And the percentage of or the amount of sidewalk that is being done as part of the active transportation plan is fairly limited. And I think that if we really want to make a difference, we do have to consider our sidewalks as a core service within the district, and probably the most critical part of the active transportation network, even though it's not classified within that framework. So I think that this is something that the district would be willing to do the extra 1% to see us get a start on the sidewalks. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
Yes, I will be supporting this motion. I think it's been a long-standing concern for residents and certainly for Councillor Patterson. She has been a champion for the walker, and I don't mean the walker. I mean, but actually, this is a very legitimate rationale, because there are a lot of people now that are disabled either temporarily or long-term in our community, and I think they rely on the sidewalk network for safety and for their own transportations and access. So I will support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to actually turn to the Director of Engineering and Public Works. Late at night, I want to just get an answer on this question, because I'm struggling with this one a little bit. I understand the repair pieces. I know that, as has been pointed out, it is part of our services that we do. In the understanding of this team, would this be repairs as well? Would it be doing other things? I know we always get to things like curb cuts, corner curb cuts and things on a as available basis. And is this something that would also be focused on those kinds of projects? Through me to Mr. Rennick.
Thank you, through the chair. In Appendix 4, this position is identified as being funded. I believe 2/3 of the funding is from taxation and the remaining $30,000 is from capital.
Yes.
So that would suggest that 1/3 of the hours of this position, roughly, best guess, would be doing capital programs, which, as you say, wheelchair drops is considered a capital program. This was, however, primarily focused on the operational sidewalk maintenance program, which is sort of trip hazard fixes, that type of thing. And so that's why we really put it forward as a risk mitigation. Ultimately, yes, the district has a sidewalk repair policy. Yes, we repair these things as they are reported to us, but we believe we could offer a higher level of service in mitigating the risk of sidewalk trips and falls if we had additional laborers on the concrete crew.
Thank you for that answer. The second part of my question on this one, and my apologies, I wasn't anticipating this being put forward, but I think it has merit to consider, is just the, oh shoot, what was I going to ask on this question? I think, part of this is we're in the sort of uncertainty of, I think, points raised here, right, quite legitimately. We do some of this work. This would increase the service, probably improve some safety pieces, but I'm not sure we've entirely laid out the case for this. Is this, if it gets approved here, could this be perhaps approved under maybe more of a term model where we say look at this for a 2 or 3 year and then can look at the necessity of continuing it, as opposed to sort of doing a permanent decision at this point tonight and establishing these crews, because I know that might have some impact. I see Mr. Rennick looking at Ms. Hunt, looking back at Mr. Rennick. I don't know how to, if that's not an answerable question, that's fine.
Through the mayor, ultimately it is the will of council, whether positions are term, whether they are ongoing. I certainly see the direction and that the question is going in, which is basically there has not been a business case analysis. Personally, I would always say that it's better to have the permanent capacity to get the crew used to working with that number of people, but ultimately it would be the will of council if they would prefer to explore a term position.
Thank you for that answer. I appreciate that. Okay, the motion on the floor right now is to approve it as in here, which is to add it. So this would be a $90,000 total project piece, $60,000 of that coming out of taxation. I'm struggling with this one, I'm not going to lie. But I'll call the, oh, no, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Smart. You give me a reprieve here as I think about this a bit more.
Well, just wondering, I would put a potential amendment forward for this to be a term position with one-time funding.
So, thank you. I'm just, before I get a seconder for the term position with one-time funding, this is a lot of money for one-time funding for a 2-year piece, so I just don't know that we have that to cover that kind of a 2-year term. So, Ms. LaChance?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate you flagging that. We hadn't fully done the math on the other one-time ads that we've already done. Basically, we had done the best we could to find the one-time amounts, use surplus that was available. I would caution at this point from the one-time.
So thank you for raising it. I think it's a good one, but not seeing a seconder for that as a result of that answer. So thank you. And I'm the one who raised it, so I appreciate you putting it into a motion form. It's always a good way to discuss it. Okay, motion on this is to add the sidewalk program in. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And those opposed? I have Councillor Watson, Appleton, and myself opposed. That does carry. So that gets put into the budget. That brings us to 8.5%. Certainly if there's any other motions, I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, I'm happy to take any final comments. I'm just cognizant of time. I don't want to spend another hour here, but I think it's appropriate given where we're at that people may wish to. Ms. Hunt. Oh, Ms. Hunt, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I know we've got one more slide in terms of next steps, and I just wanted to clarify next steps. I'll get Ms. LaChance to bring that up. But I just want to go back to council's motion arising around the $205,000 that council's approved in terms of additional funding for FTEs and the discretion for staff to be able to just take a look and make sure that funding is aligned with what we believe is the core needs. And I just want to let you know that we will report back on that decision as part of the financial plan bylaw.
Thank you for that. And if I might, I think if in that analysis, if there's, because that's now a bit of a random number, if there's some shift in that needs to be, be tweaked to think a little bit, perhaps if that could be brought maybe before the bylaws are brought forward, so that you're not tweaking bylaws on the fly. Or if that's possible too. But just I think we want to be reasonable here and understand that. But thank you for that flagging of those pieces. So the next steps here, just for everybody's awareness, bring forward the financial plan for readings and a loan authorization bylaw. Okay, and those aren't motions, those are just what's going to happen next. So I'm just going to give an opportunity here for anybody else who wishes to either flag anything else for changes or most urgently. No worries. Is there something we do need to have a motion for?
I get very excited when it comes to budget. Yes, we were just looking for the motion, staff recommendations of approving the plan, such that we can also receive direction and approval to prepare the financial plan bylaw.
So why don't we get that on the floor? So the motion is to approve the plan as laid out so far in this process. So moved, seconded. Thank you. This is the last chance to comment on that before we go to a question, and that would resolve it, and we'll come back with these next steps. Any other discussion around this table? It's very respectful of everybody's time. I just, on behalf of council, we made a big ask to come back with options. I know that these decisions have an impact on, will have an impact on operations, they have an impact on our capacity, they have an impact on some service levels. They do reflect, I think, the difficult times that we're in and the cost containment structure that we're in. And I just want to express my appreciation to council. I think I really thought that was a very thoughtful debate on each individual item, and really appreciate the partnership with staff on how we can kind of advance these things going forward. So thank you. Thank you for all of that, and I'm happy to call a question. Oh. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. This will come back. Anything else in terms of business before I call for seek adjournment? I've now written over all of my notes for the agenda package tonight, so I'm going to make sure. No, I think that was it, just from an adjournment perspective. Ms. Anderson, procedurally, I want to make sure we don't forget something.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry. We're seeking a motion to direct staff to draft the financial plan bylaw and bring it forward for consideration.
So moved.
Okay, moved and seconded. Thank you. And do you want the other pieces too, the loan authorization bylaw, et cetera? Okay. And so the motion would be to bring forward the 20 financial plan and the loan authorization bylaws. Ms. Hunt?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just to clarify, they may not be on the same date, but yes, the financial plan bylaw is again reliant on that, on the debt, and so getting the motion to bring forward the loan authorization bylaws is required. Thank you.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Any other motions that you require from the council at this time, outside of adjournment, which is probably the most needed? Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Thank you.